The scene begins with the protagonist recalling past events. He remembers a day when countless ominous black monoliths descended from the sky. Barriers were deployed soon after, but monsters later identified as disaster beasts broke through and invaded the human world. Among them was the demon of ruin, Linga, whose arrival led to widespread destruction and loss of life. During that period, large numbers of demonic creatures attacked armed forces across the city. Buildings were torn apart, streets were overrun, and residents were killed as the monsters advanced. Civilians fled in panic, attempting to escape the chaos unfolding around them. Amid the crowd, a man was seized by a beast and killed while trying to protect his family. His wife, holding their child, ran desperately through the streets, weaving through falling debris and incoming attacks. The child witnessed his father's death and cried out as the woman continued running, doing everything she could to survive. A larger beast noticed them escaping and signaled one of its flying companions. The creature swooped down and struck, causing the child to slip from the woman's grasp. Injured and desperate, she urged her child to flee on his own. The child cried out as she was left behind, and the memory faded. The scene returns to the present, where the protagonist stands silently in the school assembly ground. He appears distracted, still lost in the memory. When he regains awareness, it becomes clear that tears are falling from his eyes, though he tries to brush it off as nothing unusual. A friend approaches and casually comments on how the sudden school assembly disrupted their usual routine. The protagonist quickly shifts attention away from himself and instead points out the strange appearance of the man standing on stage. The commander of the northern continent addresses the students, explaining that after the appearance of the disaster beasts, certain humans awakened powers capable of opposing them. These individuals came to be known as Awakeners. 10 years earlier, Awakeners from around the world had united during a massive invasion near the north bank of the Azure River, successfully repelling the monsters in what became known as the River Crossing War. Although attacks decreased afterward, monolith activity had recently surged, signaling another large-scale invasion in the near future. The protagonist's friend quietly identifies the commander and notes his importance. The protagonist reflects internally, realizing he recognizes the name, but finds the man's appearance very different from what he had imagined. His friend explains that despite appearances, the commander was the first Awakener and the one responsible for humanity's understanding of monoliths and disaster beasts. He also mentions that even the most renowned Awakeners were once his students. The commander continues, revealing that recent research suggests ordinary people have a chance to awaken simply by touching a monolith. The purpose of the assembly is announced clearly. Students are being given the opportunity to awaken and prepare for the coming war. The crowd reacts with excitement and tension as a monolith rises from the ground. Students express amazement and hope, dreaming of becoming Awakeners themselves. The protagonist's friend becomes enthusiastic at the possibility, while the protagonist responds with a cold sense of anticipation. As the students begin moving forward, the protagonist advances without hesitation, leaving his friends behind despite their attempts to stop him. A familiar girl tries to keep him in line, but his focus remains fixed ahead. His eyes begin to glow faintly as long-suppressed emotions surface. The scene shifts indoors, where a monolith has been placed for testing. One by one, students approach under the supervision of a guard. Many touch the monolith, but none show signs of awakening. Tension builds as repeated failures continue, and anxiety spreads among the watching students. Some begin doubting their chances, questioning whether physical ability or talent matters at all. Concerns arise about the school's future if no Awakeners emerge. The guard continues calling students forward without pause. Eventually, Hikaru Oishi steps up. Murmurs ripple through the crowd as students react nervously to his presence. When he touches the monolith, it finally responds, drawing shocked attention from everyone present. As the reaction intensifies, Hikaru internally believes this moment will bring him recognition from the commander and his companion. Moments later, his awakening is confirmed, revealing unusually high base potential for a first-time Awakener. The commander's companion quietly acknowledges the result, noting that despite being newly awakened, Hikaru's total abilities far exceed the expected baseline, marking him as a rare case among the students. Hikaru confidently steps forward, believing himself to be the first awakened of the day. As he continues lingering near the monolith, someone suddenly grips his shoulder and pulls him away from it. Irritated and aggressive, Hikaru reacts instantly, his temper flaring as the surrounding students recognize the interruption. The crowd quickly realizes that Itsuki has stepped out of line, and many assume the situation will end badly for him. Among the observers, the blue-haired woman senses an unusually intense, emotional pressure radiating from Itsuki. Ignoring the attention around him, Itsuki places his hand on the monolith. In that moment, his thoughts focus entirely on the disaster beasts and the hatred he has carried ever since encountering them. The commander notices that the boy's resolve feels fundamentally different from that of the others. Almost immediately, a massive blue entity manifests behind Itsuki. Energy begins pouring violently from the monolith, engulfing him completely. The surge does not stop there, expanding outward and flooding the entire arena. The students are left stunned as the energy blooms like a massive flower, stretching hundreds of feet in every direction. While shock spreads through the crowd, Itsuki's friends react without hesitation, cheering and celebrating his awakening. It becomes clear that such a phenomenon only occurs when someone awakens the rarest class, known as the Order Breaker. Faced with this overwhelming display, Hikaru's expression darkens, his earlier confidence fading into frustration. Inside his mind, Itsuki finds himself in a calm, isolated space. He wonders whether he has truly awakened. There, he sees himself seated at the center of a glowing blue lotus formed entirely from energy. Information manifests before him, revealing his class and his Z-rank skill named Overmiss. However, when he observes his attributes, every value initially registers at 0. Soon after, his gift, Nirvana, activates, causing all of his stats to surge dramatically to 800. Realizing the meaning of this power, Itsuki feels confident that he can finally eradicate the beast that destroyed his past. Back in the real world, the intense light forces everyone present to shield their eyes. As the brightness gradually fades, Itsuki's silhouette becomes visible once more before the monolith. Hikaru stares in disbelief at what he has just witnessed, while the blue-haired woman struggles to comprehend how a newly awakened student could possess such absurd strength. The commander openly acknowledges that this awakening surpasses all previous records, declaring Itsuki the strongest awakened in history. His visible attributes stabilize at 200 each, igniting an uproar of excitement throughout the crowd. While most celebrate, Hikaru's fury deepens. Convinced that his moment has been stolen, he rises into the air, surrounded by crackling lightning. Acting on pure resentment, he launches his newly acquired ability toward Itsuki. As the attack advances, Itsuki's power automatically begins analyzing the technique at extreme speed. The lightning crashes violently into the ground, but Itsuki is already gone. Confusion spreads as no one can locate him. An instant later, he appears directly behind Hikaru, gripping him by the head and dropping him to the ground without resistance. Itsuki calmly notes that the analysis completed quickly due to the skill's low rank, allowing him to acquire the Thunderwave ability. As the process finishes, his energy surges once again. His friends notice the glow returning and make light-hearted remarks, relieved to see him unharmed. Within that familiar mental space, Itsuki understands that he always arrives here once an analysis is complete. New details appear, showing his newly acquired skill and an additional increase in his attributes. Returning to reality, he looks down at Hikaru, who lies trembling and powerless. Surrounding students whisper in disbelief, noticing that Itsuki's lightning far surpasses the original. Itsuki himself is surprised when he realizes his total stats have climbed to 840. Suddenly, the sky darkens as heavy rain begins to fall. Moments later, a massive dark monolith descends rapidly toward the school. Recognizing the danger, the commander cancels the ceremony and orders an evacuation, certain that the attack is directed at him. While others retreat, Itsuki remains unmoving. The commander acknowledges his courage as panic spreads and students flee. The massive pillar crashes into the arena, filling the air with dust and debris. Itsuki stands alone as warnings echo from behind, but he remains resolute, his hatred for the disaster beasts resurfacing. Despite concerns that he is still a rookie awakened, he reassures his friends with calm confidence before facing the threat directly. Emerging from a monolith is a skeleton soldier. the same type of creature responsible for his parents' deaths. Its stats reveal a total far below Itsuki's own. Seeing this as a test of his newly gained strength, Itsuki charges forward without hesitation. The collision sends shockwaves through the arena as his lightning-coated strike shatters the creature's chest, launching it backward and breaking it apart. The observers are stunned, but the commander quickly points out that the skeleton possesses a dangerous ability known as bone fire, capable of incinerating anyone who touches it. Blue flames engulf Itsuki, drawing cries of despair from his friends and twisted satisfaction from Hikaru. Inside the flames, Itsuki's analysis activates once more. Despite the damage, the commander senses that the boy still has untapped potential. Within his mind, Itsuki relives the memory of his mother being consumed by similar flames while protecting him. As the analysis reaches completion, he realizes the battle is far from over. A blue lotus blooms again as Itsuki re-emerges from the fire, completely restored. His new ability manifests, healing his injuries and further strengthening him. His friends react in disbelief as he stands unharmed. The blue-haired woman questions the limits of this recovery, curious whether such regeneration has any boundaries. The skeleton soldier roars in confusion as its fire proves ineffective. Itsuki activates his newly acquired power, forming black ice armor around his body. Flames wash over him without causing harm, while lightning and ice merge seamlessly, amplifying his combat ability. Shaping the ice into a draconic form, he charges forward at overwhelming speed before creating a massive blade of ice and thunder. The strike lands cleanly, annihilating the creature instantly. The arena falls silent as the remains scatter. Even seasoned observers struggle to believe what they have witnessed. Itsuki's armor dissolves as attention turns back to him. His friends rush over, relieved by his victory, while he looks around, noticing someone missing from the crowd. As order is restored, the commander instructs his assistant to handle the aftermath. Speculation spreads about Itsuki's future, but before any conclusions can be drawn, a presence behind him captures his attention. Turning around, he finds himself face to face with the commander, who studies him with unwavering seriousness. While other students watch from afar, the commander approaches and acknowledges that Itsuki is far from ordinary. Sensing the deep rage and hatred within the boy's heart, he expresses a desire to understand the source of those emotions. Itsuki reveals that everything began 10 years earlier, on the day his parents were killed by a disaster beast. The memory resurfaces clearly in his mind, showing his younger self frozen in fear as the attack unfolded. He remembers crying helplessly, unable to understand what was happening. He narrowly survived that day only because an awakened appeared at the last moment and drove the creature away. In her final moments, his mother urged him to move forward and walk his own path, even if he had to do so alone. The child could only scream for her, overwhelmed by terror and confusion. After their deaths, Itsuki blamed himself relentlessly. That guilt lingered for a long time, eventually transforming into an uncontrollable fury. In that moment of loss, he remembers staring directly at the creature responsible and feeling a hatred so deep it consumed him entirely. His eyes burned red as he vowed to one day take revenge for everything that had been taken from him. Returning to the present, Itsuki finishes recounting his past. Tears remain in his eyes as he swears to eliminate every monster without exception. When questioned about why he still cries despite harboring such hatred, he explains that ever since that day, only his right eye sheds tears, serving as a reminder that his hatred must never fade. The commander invites him to become his student and to join the Saviors League. He explains that it is a global organization composed of the strongest awakened, all dedicated to fighting the disaster beasts. Its members receive elite training and generous monthly rewards, but he also makes it clear that nothing comes without cost. Saviors fight on the front lines, risking their lives to protect humanity. Itsuki shows no interest in rewards or resources. What matters to him lies elsewhere. With unwavering resolve, he declares his desire to become a savior and fight on the front lines. The commander explains that to qualify, he must place within the top 100 in a tournament of over 1,000 participants. He mentions the standing record of 115,000 points, set 11 years earlier. Itsuki immediately recognizes the name of the hero known as the light of humanity and the strongest awakened in history. The commander admits that comparing anyone to such a figure is unreasonable, yet states that Itsuki possesses the potential to eventually stand beside him. Hearing this, Itsuki confidently declares that he will surpass the legendary hero. The boldness of that claim draws a rare glimmer of interest from the commander. A memory surfaces of the hero reflecting on the need for a new successor to rise and carry the war forward. In the present, the commander acknowledges that the presence he had been waiting for has finally appeared. Itsuki is then taken to a new location and observes a massive structure before him. The commander explains that the stone monuments function as gateways to the world of the disaster beasts. If the monsters are slain without destroying the portals, more will continue to emerge. The facility exists to isolate these monuments and also serves as a training ground for awakened individuals. He describes it as a stage notorious for its danger and known among awakened as the Rookie Graveyard. The commander notes that even the legendary hero required over 3 minutes to clear it during his rookie days. Reminding Itsuki of his declaration to surpass that hero, he challenges him to complete the stage in under 3 minutes. If he succeeds, the commander promises to officially take him on as a student. As they enter the facility, onlookers quickly recognize the commander and begin speculating about the young man accompanying him. Itsuki notices the attention and wonders about the commander's reputation. Inside, the environment reveals that the beasts within possess far greater strength than ordinary opponents. A crowd gathers, forming opinions about Itsuki, with some dismissing him outright. He proceeds to register for entry and chooses to enter alone, surprising those around him. Skepticism spreads, and some view his decision as reckless. Despite warnings and mockery, Itsuki remains unmoved. He makes it clear that his sole purpose there is to fight. After receiving clearance, he approaches the gate and prepares himself, remembering the promise to complete everything within 3 minutes. Once the challenge begins, he moves immediately, his eyes glowing red as he runs across the vast interior of the stage. The space is far larger than he expected, and he soon senses enemies closing in. A wooden monster emerges and attacks, but its strength proves insignificant. Without hesitation, Itsuki forms an ice weapon and charges forward. His confidence grows as he faces a gathering horde of similar creatures, all converging on him at once. Outside the stage, concern arises over why such a dangerous area was chosen for a rookie. Memories surface of the legendary hero effortlessly destroying a near-invincible beast, his expression cold and detached, more godlike than human. The commander explains that while the hero represents salvation, Itsuki embodies the opposite of being driven by hatred. Though unrefined, his potential is undeniable. Inside the stage, Itsuki realizes that enemies of this level cannot even trigger his deeper abilities. His hatred intensifies, reflected clearly in his red eyes. He charges forward, cutting through every monster in his path without slowing down. As bodies fall, he briefly wonders whether the challenge is truly this simple. That thought fades quickly when he senses something unusual. A previously defeated creature begins regenerating rapidly, revealing that the real test has only just begun. The creature regenerates completely, its form restoring itself while its overall strength increases. To protect himself, Itsuki activates his black ice wall and shapes the ice along his arm into a blade. Through repeated observation, he understands that ordinary damage will not stop the regeneration and that only overwhelming force can delay it. As he continues fighting, his analysis steadily progresses. He attacks without pause, striking again and again with ice blades. As the analysis advances further, he gathers his power and brings down a massive ice sword in a single downward strike. The attack cleanly splits the wooden creature into 2 equal halves. Refusing to allow recovery, Itsuki uses his ice-covered arms to force the separated sections apart. Under constant pressure, the creature finally breaks into multiple fragments. However, prolonged use of black ice places a heavy burden on his mana. Before he can recover, the shattered remains begin to draw together again. The creature reforms in front of him and immediately launches another attack. Itsuki realizes that the regeneration is tied directly to the continued analysis, which increases with each cycle of destruction and recovery. To conserve energy, he shifts to lightning-based attacks, maintaining distance while continuing to push the analysis forward. Time becomes a pressing concern as the limit approaches quickly. With little margin left, he begins combining ice and thunder, forcing repeated regeneration to accelerate the copying process. The risk is high, especially if the copied ability requires mana to activate. While evading incoming attacks, the analysis continues to climb. Despite growing exhaustion, Itsuki commits fully, accepting the danger. Mid-attack, the analysis increases further as he surges forward, his body surrounded by lightning. He lands a decisive blow directly to the creature's head, expending nearly all of his remaining energy. The strain leaves him barely able to stand. Taking advantage of his weakened state, the creature counterattacks, impaling him with multiple wooden spikes. At that moment, Itsuki realizes that his mana reserves have been completely depleted. Even so, he remains composed, aware that the copied ability does not consume mana. As the analysis reaches completion, a blue lotus manifests around him. A new ability awakens, restoring his body, healing his injuries, and enhancing his physical attributes. With renewed strength, he focuses on the creature and activates the newly acquired power. Bringing his hands together, he releases the ability directly forward. A massive lotus-shaped explosion erupts, striking the wooden monster head-on. The impact spreads outward in a destructive wave, obliterating the creature and scorching the surrounding area. When the aftermath settles, nothing remains of the monster. Itsuki observes the result calmly, noting the effectiveness of the new ability and realizing that his mana has also been restored. Amid the lingering smoke, he notices a glowing green crystal resting on the ground. Outside the stage, concern grows as time continues to pass. Assumptions form that clearing the stage so quickly would be impossible, even if defeat itself was unlikely. Moments later, the display confirms completion, revealing a newly set record. The result leaves the observer stunned, as the clear time is shown to be just over 2 minutes. Shortly after, Itsuki exits the portal and collapses from exhaustion. Despite his condition, the record stands confirmed. The crowd reacts strongly, surprised that a level 0 rookie surpassed a long-standing benchmark by a wide margin. Once he regains his footing, Itsuki approaches Mendue Izumi and formally acknowledges him as his master. Mendue accepts him as a disciple, visibly pleased in a way rarely seen. His assistant notices the change immediately, recognizing how unusual the reaction is. While many are shocked by the announcement, doubt still lingers among some observers. Noticing the situation, the receptionist approaches with an apology and presents a small gift. Itsuki accepts it without resentment, understanding her earlier concern. His calm response leaves her visibly flustered. Soon after, the blue-haired woman signals that it is time to leave. The commander suggests increasing the difficulty, explaining that the previous stage no longer presents a challenge for Itsuki. As they walk, Mendue clarifies that a creature's level alone does not define its threat. Instead, the deciding factor is species. Some beasts act purely on instinct, while others possess intelligence equal to or exceeding that of humans, making them far more dangerous. The blue-haired woman adds that although awakened beasts are similar in nature, only humans possess structure classes. Based on this, she explains that Itsuki's next destination will be the advanced stages of District 4. As they move on, Itsuki briefly reflects on the creatures he defeated. The assistant senses a subtle change in his presence and grows uneasy, unsure of his thoughts. Nearby, whispers spread that the stages in District 4 are controlled by someone named Kanashida. The discussion quickly dies down as fear of repercussions sets in. Elsewhere, Kanashida is shown asserting his authority, behaving arrogantly, and disregarding rules that apply to others. He treats the area as his own and shows no intention of yielding to anyone. Later, Itsuki opens the gift he received and finds a glowing white stone inside. While seated with the commander and the assistant, he examines it carefully, recognizing its nature. Mendue confirms that it is a karma stone. Itsuki recalls the larger green crystal left behind by the defeated creature and notes the difference in color. The assistant is shocked to learn that an intermediate karma stone formed in a beginner-level stage. The blue-haired woman explains that karma stones store experience energy released when beasts are defeated, normally absorbed directly to increase level. The formation of such a stone in that environment is highly unusual. Mendue theorizes that Itsuki's unique condition prevented normal absorption. The energy from the earlier battle was instead distributed among those present. Later, when Itsuki fought alone, the excess energy condensed into the stone rather than being absorbed. When the assistant questions how Itsuki's strength increases without leveling, Mendue immediately stops the discussion, stating that an awakened's gift is confidential. He instructs Itsuki to use the stone as he sees fit and informs him that he will be leaving for a conference. Before departing, he lays down clear rules, including secrecy and clearing multiple stages. Itsuki accepts the instructions confidently. In District 4, two awakened argue with security guards over access to a reserved stage. Tensions rise as they protest the misuse of authority. Before the situation can escalate further, a presence emerges behind them. One of the awakened attempts to retaliate, but is struck down instantly. The second is overwhelmed just as quickly. The attacker reveals himself as Teru Oga, a level 12 enforcer loyal to Riken Ashida. His metallic form and overwhelming power leave no room for resistance. He issues a clear warning that no one may enter without permission and demonstrates the consequences without hesitation. Despite attempts by others to de-escalate the situation, Teru shows no restraint and leaves the two awakened incapacitated. At that moment, Itsuki and the blue-haired woman arrive, moving toward the injured individuals as attention turns toward the enforcer. The surrounding crowd quickly reacts to Itsuki's appearance, noting that he is only level 0 and assuming his decision to intervene will end badly. Some also recognize the woman beside him as someone familiar. Teru Oga blocks the path forward, making it clear that entry without permission will not be allowed. Itsuki understands that defeating him is the only way forward. The blue-haired woman considers contacting the administrator, but Itsuki stops her, recalling his master's words about standing firm for what he believes in. He asks the assistant to look after the injured awakened while he handles the situation himself. Although mocked for his level, Teru senses an unusual pressure coming from the young man. Despite the massive gap in level, Itsuki's total attributes far exceed expectations, causing even the experienced enforcer to tense up. Before Teru can react, Itsuki closes the distance at extreme speed and lands a direct punch to Teru's metallic face. The sudden impact shocks the onlookers, many of whom cannot even track Itsuki's movement. Cracks form along Teru's metal surface, forcing him to acknowledge the speed behind the attack. However, he quickly retaliates with a powerful kick, sending Itsuki flying backward. Realizing brute force alone will not be enough, Itsuki activates Thunder Wave to enhance his agility and combat efficiency. The enemy's metallization ability begins to be analyzed, progressing steadily as the fight continues. Itsuki understands that striking exposed, non-metallized areas will be the key to victory. Planting his feet firmly, he commits fully. Teru prepares to counter, confident in his superiority, but Itsuki increases his speed further and attacks before full metallization can occur. A relentless barrage follows, and the analysis accelerates rapidly as each hit lands in succession. The speed and variety of Itsuki's abilities leave the crowd stunned, many questioning how a level 0 awakened can wield powers associated with other classes. As the pressure mounts, Teru realizes that continuing at this pace will lead to defeat. Forced into desperation, he unleashes a massive surge of energy and fully metallizes his body. The transformation drastically increases his defensive power, pushing it beyond 500 points. Despite his confidence, the process consumes a significant amount of mana, a detail Itsuki immediately recognizes. Rather than attempting to exhaust his opponent, Itsuki decides to finish the fight decisively. The analysis reaches completion, and once again a blue lotus manifests around him. Those watching struggle to understand the nature of the ability, unaware that a new power has been acquired. The piercing sphere forms in front of Itsuki, slow-moving but dense with energy. Many dismiss the attack due to its lack of speed, including Teru himself. However, when the sphere makes contact, it pierces straight through his metallic defense, ignoring its durability entirely. The attack passes through his body, shattering the belief in his absolute defense and leaving him incapacitated. Itsuki deliberately spares a vital strike, recognizing his opponent as human. He then turns his attention to the remaining enforcers, instructing them to take the injured to medical care before ordering everyone to leave. Shaken by the outcome, the men retreat quickly with their fallen leader. The crowd reacts with disbelief as the victory settles in. Those Itsuki saved approach him, proposing that they form a team to clear the stage together, explaining that their group includes a healer who could sustain repeated use of his new ability. Itsuki recognizes the strategic value, but refuses without hesitation, choosing to proceed alone. The decision stuns the onlookers, as entering an advanced stage solo carries significant risk. The blue-haired woman warns him, and the assistant expresses concern over the durability of the upcoming enemies and his remaining mana. Despite this, Itsuki reassures her. After giving final advice about enemy behavior and mana consumption, she turns her attention back to the wounded. Itsuki approaches the gate and enters the advanced stage alone. Inside, he finds a barren, rocky battlefield filled with stone creatures watching from afar. Their nature becomes immediately apparent as beings that convert magic directly into defensive strength. Itsuki activates the piercing sphere to test whether these monsters trigger its passive condition. When the sphere strikes, it cleanly pierces a stone creature, destroying it instantly. With the kill, the sphere's speed increases significantly, confirming his theory. More stone creatures emerge, noticeably more aggressive than the first. Recognizing that slow, heavily armored enemies are ideal targets, Itsuki continues fighting, carefully monitoring his mana usage. Each attack consumes a fixed amount of energy, leaving him with only a few opportunities remaining. To conserve power, he devises a plan to eliminate multiple enemies at once. Launching the sphere into the ground, he creates a cloud of debris to obscure vision. Using the moment, he leaps above the battlefield and attacks from an elevated angle. The sphere pierces through multiple targets, further increasing its speed before Itsuki finally collapses from exhaustion. Although completely drained, he notes that the ability has grown significantly stronger, capable of striking faster targets than before. The ground then begins to shake violently. A massive presence emerges as the stage boss reveals itself. The stone giant activates gigantification, swelling to an enormous size and radiating overwhelming power. Itsuki immediately enhances his agility with Thunder Wave and considers whether the piercing sphere can penetrate such a formidable opponent. Aiming for the head is his best chance. He jumps high to line up an attack, but the creature strikes first. Unable to evade midair, Itsuki raises his black ice wall in defense. The blow shatters the ice instantly and sends him crashing into the arena wall, making it clear that this opponent far exceeds anything he has faced so far. Even so, Itsuki remains composed. As a giant's ability is detected, his copying process activates once again, giving him a potential path forward. Far away, news of Teru Oga's defeat reaches Kanashida. Irritated by the report, he learns that the one responsible was not a high-level awakened, but a rookie. The revelation infuriates him. Wasting no time, he prepares to move personally, determined to deal with whoever dared to defy the authority of the Kanashida family. Back inside the stage, the analysis reaches completion and Itsuki emerges within the Blue Lotus. The copied ability is secured while the giant stone creature remains locked onto him. The piercing sphere evolves to its second level, gaining increased speed and adjustable size. Itsuki quickly understands that the passive effects have doubled and that mana can now be used to alter the sphere's scale. Despite his excitement, his overall attributes temporarily drop as the transformation settles. Positioning himself above the golem, he expends all remaining mana to form the largest piercing sphere he can sustain. The massive purple-black construct descends with overwhelming force, piercing straight through the stone giant from top to bottom and annihilating it completely. Lying on the ground afterward, drained of mana, Itsuki reflects that he may have overcommit. The golem is confirmed defeated, and the piercing sphere gains a massive increase in speed. Holding a green karma stone, he calculates the potential growth of the ability and realizes that repeated use could rapidly push its speed into extreme territory. He then recognizes that he had underestimated the importance of passive effects, particularly the way Lotus Burst enhances the range of all his abilities with each kill. Outside the stage, the recorded clear time shocks the observers. Even coordinated teams struggle to achieve similar results. Yet Itsuki surpasses previous benchmarks alone. When he exits, Observers are confused by the lack of injuries and his unchanged level. The blue-haired assistant notes his condition with visible disbelief, acknowledging that he cleared the challenge effortlessly. As attention shifts to her jade butterfly familiar, she introduces herself as a Shikigami user and explains the nature of her class. She outlines the primary awakened categories, starting with elementalists, then Shikigami users, and finally revealing that Itsuki belongs to the rarest category, the Orderers. She explains that Orderers possess unique, exclusive abilities that do not follow standard ranking conventions, which is why information about them is scarce. Itsuki notes that her familiar surpasses her in strength, prompting her to explain that Shikigami absorb experience independently. Sensing the dark intent behind his observations, she grows uneasy but continues explaining. She describes the final class as too sensitive to discuss further and shifts the topic, informing him that the awakened he saved has recovered. With the current stage locked by cooldown, Itsuki decides to focus on strengthening Lotus Burst. He asks about a location suited for large-scale combat. The assistant identifies the Locust Desert, a hazardous area filled with countless low-level monsters. Despite her warnings, Itsuki remains confident and proceeds. Elsewhere, Riken Ashita arrives too late, learning that his target has already moved on. Furious at being outpaced, he orders his men to deploy a tracker to follow residual mana traces, determined to capture the culprit alive. In a separate location, an assassin attempts to hide, believing himself safe, only to be ambushed by a massive red-eyed wolf. From above, the tracker Charles observes calmly as his familiar, Mort, executes the kill. Afterward, Charles receives word of Teru Oga's defeat and recognizes that a new target has emerged. Meanwhile, Itsuki and the assistant arrive at the Locust Desert. The environment is barren and unsettling, with no staff present due to the extreme danger. Skeletal remains confirm the threat posed by the endless swarms. Unfazed, Itsuki enters the stage alone. Inside, the desolate field is overrun by low-level locusts. Despite their weak individual strength, their numbers are overwhelming. Activating Lotus Burst, Itsuki allows the swarm to converge before unleashing wide-area explosions that annihilate them in waves. With each use, the skill's range expands rapidly. However, the absence of a completion signal alerts him that something is wrong. New swarms continue emerging endlessly. Realizing the presence of a hidden boss with a reproduction ability, Itsuki continues fighting to force further analysis. Explosion after explosion wipes out thousands, yet the numbers never diminish. Eventually, the source reveals itself as a locust queen, concealed underground and commanding infinite reproduction. With mana nearly depleted and the analysis close to completion, Itsuki presses on until a new ability is finally acquired. The newly gained mana sense restores energy based on detected enemies and grants an enormous detection range. Fully restored, Itsuki locates the queen instantly. Combining his enhanced piercing sphere with accumulated passive bonuses, he launches a decisive attack that tears through the ground and obliterates the boss. Appearing immediately afterward, he finishes the queen without resistance. Deprived of leadership, the remaining locusts descend into chaos and are swiftly eradicated. After collecting his rewards and setting a new record, Itsuki exits the stage. Expecting to find the assistant waiting, he instead discovers her unconscious, restrained by Charles. Before any exchange can escalate further, Itsuki launches himself forward at extreme speed, lightning enveloping his body. Charles barely has time to react before Mort intercepts the attack, blocking the blow with its massive form and shielding its master from impact. The detection ability identifies the creature as a B-rank Shikigami, and the analysis begins to advance steadily. From this, the protagonist realizes that the giant wolf is not a natural beast and that the man wearing the hat is its user. Charles observes the protagonist's movements and speed and understands why Oga was defeated without even needing to activate his armor. He restrains the wolf Mort by treating it as leverage and positions the blue-haired assistant as a shield. Itsuki continues holding the wolf back while the analysis progresses. The creature opens its massive jaws and lunges forward, attempting to crush the protagonist's arm with full force. Despite the pressure, the attack is stopped by the ice arm, and the protagonist immediately forms a piercing sphere. The sphere detonates inside the wolf's mouth, sending the massive body flying backward from the impact. With the Shikigami temporarily neutralized, the protagonist recognizes that a user without their summoned beast is largely defenseless. The analysis reaches 77%. Charles is unsettled by the speed of the process and questions whether the young man is truly only a rookie. He explains that Mort possesses a responsibility that significantly shortens its revival time. The wolf regenerates and charges again. The protagonist activates Mana Sense, releasing a wave of energy that spreads across the battlefield. He evades the renewed assault and continues maintaining the skill, judging the decision to be correct. The analysis nears completion, but Itsuki notes that summoning the Blue Lotus now might alert the enemy. Charles grows increasingly desperate as he realizes the gap in power, speed, and detection ability. He tightens his grip on the assistant and threatens her again. The protagonist wants to complete the analysis without invoking the Lotus, but the situation becomes increasingly unstable. The analysis finally completes, granting the Shikigami Eater ability. The new skill allows control over Shikigami and raises his stats by 20 points. However, the healing effect fails due to the incomplete copy process. The protagonist understands that skipping the Blue Lotus caused the loss of healing, but he no longer considers it important since his condition has already stabilized. Mort charges once more, and the protagonist realizes the new ability allows him to steal Shikigami from other users. He prepares to use it immediately. His eyes glow red as he places his hand on the wolf's head, and a blue light envelopes the creature as it begins to transform. Using the moment of distraction, he delivers a powerful kick to the man in the hat, sending him flying. Charles reacts with fury toward the wolf, angered that all the experience he invested amounted to nothing. He once again threatens the assistant. Despite her weakened state, she urges the protagonist to keep fighting and not worry about her. The protagonist raises his hands in surrender to buy time. Charles, convinced of his control, reveals his identity and explains that he was sent by Ri Kineseta to capture him. Upon hearing the name, the protagonist understands that confronting Ri directly will be unavoidable. Charles issues further threats, warning the protagonist not to use his ice abilities. However, when both the user and the protagonist give commands, the wolf Mort turns on its former master. A lotus symbol appears on its forehead as it bites down on Charles instead. Taking advantage of the opening, the protagonist uses his speed to rescue the assistant and holds her safely. Charles screams in confusion and pain as his own familiar attacks him. The protagonist approaches the wolf calmly, acknowledging it as his own. He resolved to make Charles pay for the suffering he caused. In panic, Charles attempts to bargain for his life by offering information about Ray. The protagonist considers the proposal but remains composed. Charles misreads the situation and launches a counterattack, creating and firing a massive ice spike. The attack is dismissed without hesitation. The wolf is ordered to make Charles experience the same pain he inflicted. Terrified, Charles begs for mercy, but the wolf shows none and devours him without restraint. As the aftermath settles, the protagonist senses another presence that has been observing from afar. He challenges the watcher to reveal themselves. The scene widens to show the wheat field surrounding the stage structure. A hooded figure emerges from the crops, admitting he has been discovered. The newcomer denies any connection to Charles and introduces himself as Abiria. He recognizes Itsuki as the one who defeated Teru Oga and requests assistance, offering creation stones and weapons in exchange. He reflects on his father's teachings about meaningful rewards and realizes what the protagonist truly needs. Noticing the assistant's condition, Abiria warns that moving slowly could cost her life. He reveals a healing scroll and explains that while it is not instant, it will save her. The protagonist pauses and confirms the claim. Abiria explains the nature of artifacts, their rarity, and their categories, ranging from common to unique. He also explains the role of artisans and reveals that his father is among the top 10, known as the Artisan King of the North. The protagonist shows little reaction to the story and instead retrieves the crossbow Charles dropped earlier. Abiria explains that it is a rare artifact capable of generating its own ammunition and demonstrates how soul-bound artifacts can be stored. After thanking him for the healing item, the protagonist states his intention to find Rai Kanashida. Iberia reacts with surprise and admits they share the same target. He proposes forming a team for the Savior's national tournament preliminaries, explaining the structure of the competition and Ri's attempts to monopolize stages to advance faster. Iberia explains his own motivation, describing his admiration for his father and his desire to fight disaster beasts as an awakened. His father agreed to give him an artifact only if he passed the preliminaries on his own merit. Because of this, he is determined to succeed without relying on his family name. The protagonist questions why Iberia did not seek stronger allies. Iberia explains that the strongest participants have already been recruited by Ri, and that discovering someone who broke a record led him here. The partnership is accepted with the condition that the assistant is taken to the hospital first. As they prepare to leave, the protagonist briefly thinks about his friends and whether they will also enter the preliminaries. Elsewhere, Riku trains intensely for the upcoming event while Sayu observes him. Seo expresses concern about the recent attack and the protagonist's safety. Their exchange escalates into light sparring before a muscular man interrupts them, reminding them that the preliminaries are about to begin. At the same time, Raji Kanisasha examines 3 creation stones inside a silver briefcase. Irritated by his henchman's delay, he assumes something has gone wrong. In frustration, he crushes one of the stones and absorbs the experience it provides. He shifts his focus back to the preliminaries, knowing failure will bring severe consequences from his father. With support from hundreds of awakened recruits, he prepares to move forward. He uses the final creation stone and successfully levels up through the accumulated experience. Lightning spreads across his body as his power stabilizes at the new level. Far away, the protagonist appears surrounded by a faint blue aura, his expression steady and prepared for what lies ahead. Inside a hospital room, the protagonist apologizes to the commander for Aya's condition. Minyu Izumi considers eliminating the rich kid immediately, but the protagonist stops him and makes it clear that he will handle the matter himself. After a brief pause, the commander agrees and asks to be informed of the details later. Iberia is shocked to discover that Minyu Izumi is the young man's master and immediately becomes overly excited. The protagonist states that he will be entering the preliminaries with Iberia and asks about Aya's condition. She is reported to be stable thanks to her jade butterfly and Iberia's rare artifact. Minyu Izumi recognizes the item and correctly identifies Iberia as the son of the famous artisan Aiden. Startled that the commander knows his father, Iberia attempts to carry himself more seriously, but ends up misspeaking out of nervousness. The mistake leaves everyone momentarily stunned before the commander calmly corrects him. Completely embarrassed, Iberia fixes his statement. Minyu Izumi thanks him for saving his daughter and mentions that he plans to visit Aiden after the tournament. He then instructs both young men to prepare, informing them that he and Aya will be watching the next day. With confidence, the duo agrees and assures him they will pass the preliminaries. Aya comments that her father has always liked the protagonist, recalling how she was often taken along to his meetings. Minyu Izumi then explains that, due to past trauma, the protagonist has a strong self-destructive tendency, but that tendency weakens significantly when there is someone nearby he wants to protect. Because of this, he deliberately placed his daughter by the young man's side, assigning her the role of becoming his closest friend and the person he would most want to protect. He then reveals that the attack on the school was not accidental, but a deliberate act. The number of traitors aligned with the beasts is increasing, and humanity's situation is worsening. Even so, he expresses firm belief that the protagonist will change that future and become a guiding light for humanity. The scene shifts to the Northern District 4, where the tournament preliminaries are being held. Upon arrival, the protagonist and Iberia see that the number of participants has risen from 3,000 to 5,000. The increase irritates Ri, who views it as unnecessary interference. Seo and Rika notice that Ri's allies are marked with red ribbons for identification. Soon after, Soryafuji appears to explain the rules. The arena is divided into 2 zones, with participants starting from different locations. The first phase is a race toward the inner area, where a rival order determines ranking. Only the top 500 will advance. Participants are limited to carrying 2 tools. Iberia draws the protagonist's attention to this restriction as Riku observes the function of the bracelets. Sayo notes how ruthless it is to eliminate thousands in the opening phase. Ri arrives with his henchmen and asserts control, ordering everyone not to move ahead of him. Iberia recognizes the awakened fighters re-recruited and quietly plans to act once an opening appears. However, the protagonist walks straight toward them without hesitation. The henchmen immediately notice the absence of a red ribbon, leaving Iberia stunned by his partner's behavior. The signal is given, and the first phase begins as participants rush forward. Observers comment that enthusiasm alone is meaningless without ability. Past tournaments are discussed, including rare cases of high-level rookies. Rumors circulate about a gifted student, which Commander Minuizumi quietly confirms. This draws interest from the officials, who begin scanning participant data. Several candidates are dismissed due to mediocre aptitude or support roles. One unusually high-level rookie briefly draws attention. But Minuizumi does not agree with the assessment. The discussion shifts to curiosity about level 0 participants. Back in the arena, Ri and his henchmen mock the protagonist. He remains unfazed and activates one of his artifacts, standing his ground. Ri is surprised by the reaction and attempts to assert dominance. The protagonist meets his gaze calmly, making it clear he is not intimidated. Ri assumes the young man is a disposable pawn and orders his men to seize him. Lightning begins to surround Ri as his subordinates move to encircle the pair. One of them dismisses the situation entirely, confident in the numerical and level advantage. Iberia knows he could handle one opponent, but believes facing 4 is unrealistic. He prepares to activate an artifact, but the protagonist stops him. The lead henchman openly underestimates the protagonist, convinced the encounter will be effortless. Without hesitation, the protagonist steps forward and confronts him directly. The sheer audacity leaves the henchman stunned before he breaks into laughter, joined by the others. One of the men who had previously lost to the protagonist observes with interest, finding his attitude familiar. Before the taunts can escalate further, the protagonist delivers a clean, decisive punch to the henchman's face, knocking him unconscious instantly. Standing over him, the protagonist remains composed. The remaining henchmen are shaken, struggling to understand how someone 7 levels lower achieved this. Confusion spreads among them, though one tries to dismiss it as luck. Another, growing irritated, unleashes a powerful fire-based attack. The speed of the assault leaves Iberia momentarily frozen, unable to react. When the flames subside, the protagonist emerges unharmed, shielded by a black ice wall. Iberia watches in disbelief as the realization sets in that the attack was fully blocked. The protagonist calmly signals for Iberia to step back, making it clear he intends to handle the fight alone. The masked henchman is left staring in shock, unable to comprehend how ice was used without a water elementalist present. The protagonist provokes another attack, stating that he will not defend himself this time. The opponent assumes it is a bluff and accepts, while the young man calmly maintains his stance. The masked fighter gathers everything he has left and releases his strongest fire technique, determined to finish the fight in one strike. The protagonist remains completely still. Even with the increased output, he recognizes it as the same type of attack. From the outside, it appears reckless, and some observers believe his strength already rivals that of a higher-level awakened. The masked henchman expends all of his remaining energy, convinced that using it on a level 0 opponent is a waste, but confident the fight is over. The result leaves him stunned. The outcome is nothing like what he expected. The protagonist confirms through experience that the passive effect of his ice-based defense does not stack when facing the same attack repeatedly. With that understanding complete, he turns his attention to the remaining enemies, deciding to end the confrontation. One of the brutes believes he has already identified the young man's weakness and responds by unleashing a fire barrier at full power. The protagonist questions whether they intend to win through numbers alone and reinforces his defense. A large explosion follows as flames collide with the barrier, filling the area with smoke. The brute assumes the young man's energy reserves are limited and plans to exhaust him. When the smoke clears, he is shocked to find the protagonist standing directly in front of him. The distance was closed instantly. The protagonist notes that the defensive effect triggered only once during the exchange. The brute attempts to compensate with raw strength, but the protagonist calmly questions whether any real force is being used at all. With a single strike, he sends the man flying, removing him from the fight. Observing the aftermath, the protagonist realizes how the defensive calculation functions and shifts his focus to the last 2 opponents. Both remaining enemies rely on lightning-based abilities. Recognizing the opportunity, he engages them directly. They launch their combined attack, but the protagonist absorbs the impact and counters without hesitation. Moments later, both collapse, unable to continue. With the skirmish over, the protagonist briefly reflects on how easily the encounter concluded. He understands that the lightning-based passive functions the same way as his ice defense, activating only once per target. Iberia looks over the fallen opponents in disbelief, openly impressed by the outcome. He admits he expected a difficult battle and never imagined the fight would end so decisively. One of the defeated men, still conscious, struggles to understand how someone labeled as level 0 could overpower them so thoroughly. Iberia approaches with visible excitement, making a bold declaration about their partnership. The protagonist ignores the theatrics entirely and moves forward, pulling Iberia along and reminding him of their actual objective. The injured henchman remains confused by the nickname Iberia chose and dismisses it as unimpressive. Elsewhere, a bespectacled observer notices the disturbance and assumes the level 0 participant should have been eliminated by now. However, he recognizes the presence of a beast that once belonged to Charles and quietly notes that few individuals outside the alliance would have been capable of subduing him. Another participant boasts about his speed while overtaking others, only to be struck suddenly by a bolt of purple lightning. He collapses in pain, unable to understand how he was attacked mid-sprint. The bespectacled man steps on him without hesitation, his body crackling with energy, making it clear that running ahead was a mistake. He orders his group to conserve their strength and ignore anyone unworthy of their attention. From a distance, a woman remarks on the arrogance of the administrator's son from District 4. Despite her disapproval, she acknowledges that his behavior does not violate any rules. Confident in his position, the rich kid advances, certain he will easily clear the next phase. The scene shifts to the inner area, where early arrivals gather and wait. The rich kid arrives first and displays open satisfaction with his performance. Suddenly, a bolt of blue lightning cuts through the sky, forcing him to turn around in shock. In the rain, the protagonist and Iberia emerge together. The henchmen are stunned, unable to believe the pair survived. The rich kid assumes his subordinates must have been bribed, unwilling to accept the truth. Iberia recognizes that reaching this point was only possible because the protagonist eliminated every obstacle along the way. Uninterested in lingering, the rich kid prepares to move on and orders his remaining forces to deal with the two intruders. Iberia freezes when he realizes how many enemies remain, but the protagonist calms him and signals for him to shield his ears. A powerful lightning shockwave erupts, sweeping through the area and throwing the surrounding henchmen aside. The rich kid watches without concern, unconcerned with their fate. The path is cleared instantly, leaving Iberia stunned by the sheer scale of the display. The protagonist turns his focus fully to the rich kid, making it clear the confrontation is not over. In the distance, other participants arrive and comment on the unusual resistance they encountered. Rankings begin to form, and several notable competitors draw attention. Iberia collapses after reaching the inner area, calling out urgently. Others recognize the protagonist surrounded by blue lightning, confirming his identity beyond doubt. Observers begin to question why he is so fixated on the rich kid. Concerned by the escalation, Minyu quietly instructs a senior awakened to intervene if the situation spirals out of control. The senior watches with interest, impressed by the young man's speed and wondering how it compares to his own past. Irritated, the rich kid prepares to escalate the situation further, framing it not as a battle, but a one-sided elimination. His forces regroup and charge all at once toward the lone figure standing in their path. One attacker launches a full-powered strike, only for the protagonist to stop it with a single hand. The counterattack follows immediately, sending the attacker flying with overwhelming force. The remaining henchmen hesitate, but attempt to reassure themselves through numbers alone. The protagonist advances without hesitation. With decisive intent, he releases a massive burst of power that engulfs the area, knocking every remaining enemy to the ground. Observers across the arena react in disbelief at the scale of destruction. As the dust settles, the protagonist stands alone at the center, having restrained himself intentionally. All opposition lies defeated. He He faces the rich kid directly, leaving no room for escape. Terrified, the rich kid struggles to comprehend how one person could overwhelm so many. He lashes out with a powerful lightning-based attack, but the protagonist avoids it effortlessly, reinforcing the difference between them. Realizing defeat is inevitable, the rich kid panics and calls for outside intervention. A red-eyed man appears, unconcerned with protocol. The rich kid openly relies on him, confident in the difference in power. From above, a senior observer signals approval for the intervention. At the same time, the protagonist senses a powerful presence approaching at extreme speed, recognizing that the situation has escalated beyond the preliminary stage. As the analysis continues, the protagonist realizes that the threat is not limited to a single opponent. A massive brute suddenly comes flying toward him, crashing into the ground with a heavy impact that sends dust rising into the air. Despite the force of the arrival, the young man remains completely unfazed. He calmly observes the situation, showing neither tension nor fear. Before the brute can act, Shu Heighten appears and subdues the attacker with a single decisive strike, purple lightning surrounding him as he intervenes. With the obstacle removed, the protagonist turns his attention back to the rich kid, fully aware that the situation has reached its conclusion. Desperation drives the rich kid to invoke his family's influence in an attempt to save himself. But the attempt fails completely. The protagonist advances without hesitation, striking him down and leaving him writhing on the ground. Looking at the fallen body, he makes it clear through his actions that this outcome is the result of everything the man did to IA. From a distance, the blue-haired woman witnesses the scene and becomes visibly flustered by what she sees. Her father notes that the rich kid has already been defeated and briefly wonders why the protagonist is now looking in their direction. The analysis reaches its final stages, and the young man deliberately pauses it, conserving his stamina for later. At that moment, a familiar voice calls out to him. He turns instinctively, immediately recognizing who it is. Sayo and Riku finally arrive, relieved to see him safe. Concerned about the heavy rain, Sayo urges him to move inside, worried about his condition. The moment becomes emotional as Riku and Iberia rush forward and cling to him, overwhelmed with relief. Riku eyes the blonde suspiciously, clearly displeased by how close he is, while Iberia confidently presents himself as the protagonist's partner. The reaction from the group is mixed, ranging from surprise to disbelief, and the tension dissolves into light teasing as Iberia enthusiastically insists on naming their duo. Soon after, the announcer declares the end of the first phase. Only 500 participants remain, and the rest are eliminated. The second phase is announced, explaining that each participant will now fight beasts alone for a full hour inside the arena. Iberia is visibly shaken by the idea, while the others quietly prepare themselves. Above the arena, Shu Heighten watches with clear excitement, eager to see what the rookies will reveal. Rankings from the first phase are displayed, and the participants are drawn toward the massive arena where the second phase will unfold. As they enter, the atmosphere grows heavier. Rika comments on the darkness of the place and questions whether the protagonist's level truly remains fixed at 0. Iberia also wonders how he continues to grow stronger, but Sayo quickly shuts down the curiosity, reminding them that the abilities of order breakers are not meant to be discussed. High above, the organizers gather, and the presence of legendary figures draws attention from everyone present. The rules of the second phase are laid out clearly, with points awarded based on difficulty, ranging from beginner to nightmare. Each victory allows a brief rest before progressing further. Some participants boldly declare their intent to challenge the highest difficulty immediately. The protagonist, however, calmly raises a question regarding the limits of the nightmare class. His inquiry draws ridicule from others, who believe he lacks the ability to even clear the lowest tier. The announcer explains that there is no true upper limit, and the significance will become clear once a nightmare beast is faced. The revelation that points now contribute toward the main tournament and alliance membership shocks many, forcing them to reassess their strategies. The second phase begins. The arena initially appears no different from other stages. A group of low-level Calamity Hounds emerges, and the protagonist swiftly engages them, eliminating the entire group in a single instant. Observers are stunned by the speed of the clear, as such fights usually take minutes. The next opponent, a much stronger salamander, appears. Flames engulf the area as it attacks, completely surrounding the protagonist. Concern rises among the spectators, but moments later, he emerges unharmed, fully protected. He closes the distance and cleaves the creature apart in a matter of seconds, securing another swift victory. The deliberate nature of his approach reveals his intent to strengthen himself through every encounter. Without resting, he immediately advances to the next challenge. A powerful electric rhino appears, known for its devastating charge and paralyzing lightning. Rather than evading, the protagonist calmly approaches and allows the creature to strike him directly. The impact sends him flying, but a protective aura prevents serious injury. From the control room, concern spikes, but Shu Heighten remains composed, noting that the young man's actions consistently defy expectations. The protagonist absorbs the attack, adapts instantly, and retaliates with overwhelming speed. He dismantles the creature with precision, ending the fight almost as quickly as it began. The next opponent is announced as the most feared beast of the preliminaries. A massive purgatory giant appears, towering over the arena with its armored body, chains, and brutal combat abilities. Without hesitation, the protagonist launches his attack and destroys the creature almost immediately. The speed and efficiency of the victory leave the observers speechless. While others across the arena continue their own battles, some struggling and others advancing steadily, the protagonist moves on without pause. The control room descends into disbelief as his performance continues to surpass expectations. At Shu Heighten's command, the difficulty is increased further. Two massive giants appear at once, charging toward him with full force. The protagonist calmly prepares his next strike, unfazed by the numbers, and eliminates one of them almost instantly, continuing his relentless advance. The announcer reacts in disbelief, questioning whether the sphere has any upper limit to its power. Shu Heighten, however, recognizes that while the ability is overwhelming, it carries a fatal weakness. At that moment, the remaining giant launches forward with absurd speed. The sudden movement catches the protagonist off guard. The creature's speed exceeds anything he has faced before. Inside the control room, the staff note that giants are often mistaken for slow beings due to their massive size. In reality, these giants belong to a fast and agile type. Their lack of mana is compensated by overwhelmingly high physical attributes, far surpassing normal standards. Realizing the danger, the protagonist hastily forms another sphere, attempting to strike before the giant closes the distance. The attack travels directly toward the monster, revealing its high agility and defense. Yet, to his shock, the giant avoids the sphere entirely. The control room quickly understands the situation. The sphere's travel speed is insufficient, and the previous hit relied on the creature's roar to connect. Without increasing its speed, progress is impossible. The giant retaliates with a powerful punch. The protagonist narrowly avoids it as the blow crashes into the arena floor, releasing violent shockwaves. Debris, dust, and shattered ground spread outward from the impact. Facing the situation, the protagonist understands that the attacks are avoidable and that a change in approach is required. Shu Heighten observes that continuing to rely on the same skill suggests a lack of remaining options. However, the protagonist shifts tactics, deciding to close the distance instead. He activates Thunder Wave, lightning enveloping his body and drastically increasing his speed. Both combatants rush toward one another. The giant throws another full-force punch, smashing the ground and carving out a crater. Despite the chaos, the protagonist advances through the dust and destruction. Inside the control room, Aju reacts in visible fear, unable to look away. The announcer panics and calls for emergency intervention, but Shurten stops the order and calmly insists on waiting. Although the giant's power is overwhelming, its attacks remain meaningless if they fail to connect. The monster attacks again, striking the ground with full force. In that brief opening, the protagonist draws its attention. The giant turns, only to realize he is already behind it. At point-blank range, the sphere is released and passes cleanly through the creature's head. Lightning still coursing through his body, the protagonist watches as the giant collapses lifelessly to the ground. The victory is confirmed. The sphere's speed increases dramatically, and a massive point gain is recorded within seconds. In the control room, the announcer and Shu Heighten observe the fallen body in silence. AIA reacts with visible relief and celebration, only to become embarrassed moments later when her reaction is noticed. The announcer remarks on her unusual enthusiasm, noting how much more expressive she has become. Shu Heighten reflects on the battle, questioning why the protagonist avoided earlier when victory was possible. The explanation is clear through observation alone. His base speed closely matches that of a purgatory giant, but once electricity flows through his body, his speed increases beyond their ability to react. Under those conditions, their attacks cannot land. With his accumulated points, first place is effectively secured. Yet the protagonist does not stop. His focus remains fixed ahead. Surpassing the strongest requires a continuous movement without hesitation. He advances as the next phase begins immediately. The third phase starts with 3 giants. The protagonist prepares himself and immediately attacks, focusing all his power on one target. Shu Heighten observes that the decision to continue is exactly what he expected. He recalls reaching phase 4 himself once, while the announcer wonders how far the protagonist can go, noting that even with exceptional physical ability, phase 3 is usually the limit. One of the remaining giants charges forward. The protagonist dodges its punch as it slams into the ground, sending dust and rocks flying. Activating Thunder Wave once more, he increases his agility, moves behind the creature, and closes the gap. Moments later, the second giant falls, and the sphere's speed rises even further. Calmly turning, the protagonist faces the final giant of the phase. This one behaves differently. It opens its massive mouth, chains erupting outward as it attempts to devour him. Its glowing red eyes lock onto the protagonist, its enormous body and heavy armor marking it as a far greater threat. Without hesitation, the protagonist activates Lotus Burst at maximum output. A fire-based attack is launched directly into the creature's face. The explosion is decisive, and the level 15 monster is eliminated almost instantly. Within seconds, another massive point total is added, setting a new record. The control room is left stunned. The announcer recognizes the fire skill as the same one responsible for the devastation in the first phase. The attack drains the protagonist's mana completely, leaving nothing remaining. However, as monsters continue to appear, his passive ability immediately begins restoring it. The fourth phase begins with 4 giants, and his mana rapidly recovers. Shurten notes that surpassing this stage would place the boy beyond all except Jin Taiwa. With visible anticipation, he watches the protagonist move forward without hesitation. The protagonist considers the growing speed of his sphere, realizing that higher velocity increases accuracy at range. With a few more increases, long-distance strikes may become viable. However, his mana remains limited, and every shot must count. Suddenly, one of the giants roars, firing chains from its mouth toward him. The protagonist prepares his sphere, but the creature acts faster than expected. The chains bind him tightly, and the giant slams him into the arena floor with overwhelming force. The impact leaves a deep crater. Completely restrained, the protagonist is unable to move. The situation becomes critical as the giant raises its massive hand and brings it down to crush him. The pressure is immense, and his body is pushed to its limit. The monster steps back, observing the destruction it has caused. Lying motionless within the crater, the protagonist is badly injured. The scene gives the impression that the battle has finally ended. Inside the control room, panic spreads. The announcer urgently calls for intervention. Cheyenne hesitates, recalling his own past and recognizing the similarity to his previous defeat. Shuen prepares to move, but the commander stops him. Menu Izumi remains calm. He observes quietly, confident that the protagonist has not yet truly given up. Panic spreads through the control room as the announcer becomes convinced that without immediate intervention, the young man will perish. The commander, however, remains composed. He is certain that the situation has not yet reached its conclusion. When questioned, his certainty comes from the young man's eyes. Even crushed beneath overwhelming force, those eyes still burn with resolve, surrounded by a faint blue aura. There is no sign of surrender. Within the crater, the protagonist activates over mimes and resumes the analysis he had deliberately paused earlier. His thoughts return to the battle against Ri and the moment he initiated analysis on his Violet Thunder Cannon. That analysis had been halted at 99%, preserved for a moment exactly like this. Now, as the final percentage completes, a blue aura fully envelopes his body. The newly completed Thunder Wave manifests, and a blue lotus forms within the control room itself, drawing immediate attention. The woman with glasses reacts with disbelief, while Shu Haitan is visibly taken aback by the sight. The effects become apparent as the aura stabilizes, granting a massive boost to agility, restoring health completely, cleansing all debuffs, and reinforcing his overall physical capacity. The blue lotus detonates into light, and the young man rises. His movements are steady, his presence transformed. The announcer is left stunned by the sheer scale of recovery and growth, far exceeding what even specialized healers can achieve. Without hesitation, the protagonist resumes combat. Two giants fall almost instantly to his sphere, its speed increasing further with each strike. The fourth phase concludes rapidly, followed by the fifth, then the sixth. Each phase ends faster than the last, each granting escalating rewards. Within minutes, the arena becomes a graveyard of colossal bodies. In the control room, silence replaces disbelief. No one speaks as the outcome unfolds before them. Amid the fallen giants, the protagonist sits among the remains and reflects briefly on the scene, questioning whether this place resembles hell more than a trial. Moments later, he notices that no further enemies appear. Confusion sets in as the absence of the next phase becomes undeniable. The announcer finally understands. The truth is revealed without embellishment. The young man has eliminated every purgatory giant prepared for the event. Standing atop the bodies, the protagonist processes the result, realizing that the gap between himself and Jin Taiwa has narrowed considerably. His objective of accelerating the sphere has been fully achieved. As his experience fails to convert into a level increase, it instead condenses into a blue karma stone. The value of the item shocks Shu Haitan, while the commander calmly explains the reason. With a fixed level and unrestricted growth, the implications are unsettling. The protagonist retrieves the stone, satisfied with the outcome, and turns toward the exit. The massive metal doors of the arena slowly open. Confirmation of victory spreads through the control room as the final results are recorded. Attention turns to the young man's future, offers of guidance and instruction briefly considered, only to be dismissed when it becomes clear that he already walks under capable mentorship. Minu Izumi watches from a distance as the pieces fall into place. When the protagonist acknowledges him as his teacher, the realization sends another ripple of shock through the room. Congratulations follow, along with concern for his condition, but aside from exhaustion, he shows no signs of injury. As events elsewhere continue, comparisons are made. Other participants reach their limits far earlier, unable to push beyond the hard class. Observations shift to those still fighting, including Shikigami users whose abilities reveal unexpected depth and terrifying latent power. The protagonist, watching briefly, recognizes the strength he has overlooked before. With his own goals complete, he prepares to leave. However, something unusual catches his attention. His partner appears clad in red armor, radiating immense power. The artifact's nature is quickly understood, an epic creation with escalating effects and severe drawbacks. Even so, its presence confirms that the Nightmare class announcement was no coincidence. The second phase of the tournament concludes shortly afterward. Rankings are finalized, revealing the protagonist firmly in first place, far ahead of all others. Reactions range from disbelief to renewed determination. Recognition spreads across the country as his performance cements his position at the top. As the preliminaries officially end, the protagonist supports his exhausted partner and exits the arena. Elsewhere, far from the celebration, an old prophet awakens from meditation with a dire vision. Danger looms over the northern continent, heralded by an approaching calamity beyond ordinary measures. Later, back among allies, the commander evaluates the protagonist's growth. Surpassing 1,500 total stats places him on par with Awakened far beyond his level. His abilities continue to defy conventional limits, especially in agility and defense. The tension eases briefly as the group gathers to rest. Exhaustion gives way to normalcy, meals are shared, and energy slowly returns. Laughter and irritation blend together as hunger overrides decorum, restoring strength in the simplest way possible. Eventually, attention shifts inward. The commander poses a question meant to ground them, not about strength, but fear. One by one, reflections surface, shaped by pasts and vulnerabilities. When the focus finally turns to the protagonist, silence follows. Even those closest to him struggle to imagine what could truly frighten someone who has already surpassed so many limits. The moment lingers unanswered. He reflects on the time after his parents passed away, when survival itself felt uncertain. Anxiety consumed him, followed by anger, sadness, hunger, and a deep sense of helplessness. Those emotions lingered until Sayo and Riku appeared in his life and helped him endure that difficult period. Their presence slowly pulled him out of that negative state, offering warmth and stability when he needed it most. Remembering their concern and simple kindness, he realizes how much those moments mattered to him. His thoughts move forward to meeting Minyu and later fighting alongside Iberia. Standing there now, he feels something he had not felt in a long time, a sense of belonging. To him, it no longer feels like he simply gained companions. Instead, it feels as though his family has grown. The calm relief he experiences is something he wishes could last indefinitely. More than anything, his greatest fear had always been living completely alone. AIA notices that his aura has softened, no longer carrying the oppressive intensity it once did. Iberia becomes emotional and embraces him tightly, unwilling to let go. Observing them, the commander explains that the purpose of the question was to ensure they would carry no regrets, as regrets are forbidden for saviors. Passing forward without regret is the ideal every savior must strive for. The group is then instructed to finish their meal, with the news that Sayo and Riku will return to their district the following day. The next morning, everyone exchanges farewells and promises to meet again at the Grand National Tournament. The protagonist lightly teases the blonde about growing close to Riku and recalls wanting to ask Sayo something, deciding to leave it for later. Soon after, Ajaha rushes in with urgency, her expression tense. She delivers confidential information from the southern continent to her father, information reserved only for the strongest. She reveals a prophecy made by Commander Bargar, foretelling a beast invasion of the northern continent. Though its reliability is questioned, she explains that Bargar is the most renowned prophet alive. Evacuation is suggested, but the commander believes he himself is the likely target. By remaining, he can serve as bait to draw the beasts away. Despite his daughter's insistence to leave, he remains firm. The protagonist offers his strength if needed, but the commander instead assigns him a task. He orders the two young men to protect Aiden, Iberia's father and the greatest artisan across all continents. Iberia is confused, while the protagonist senses that his master intends to send him away for his own protection. The commander then turns to his daughter and gives her 3 instructions: announce the attack, evacuate civilians, and prepare the strongest awaken for the coming battle. He calls for Heighten and prepares to intercept the beast himself. A few hours later, Choha reports to her father, Minduo Izumi, that all preparations have been completed as instructed and that Heighten should arrive soon. He thanks her for handling the arrangements and tells her to rest. She remains uneasy. Noticing her concern, he asks whether she is worried. Although Aiden already has skilled guards, he states that if necessary, he will eliminate the lesser threats himself and force the true enemy to reveal itself. She acknowledges that he always sees through her thoughts. He explains that the prophecy speaks of a disaster beast of level 100 or higher. Against such a threat, it would be impossible to conceal one's abilities. That is why he deliberately sent Tenma away. If Tenma were to face such a beast and fight using his unique methods, his abilities would inevitably be exposed. Once revealed, the enemy would prioritize eliminating him. She understands that sending him elsewhere prevents that outcome. He then adds another reason. Based on Tenma's battles so far, his greatest weakness is insufficient attack power. Rumors suggest that Aiden possesses an artifact capable of greatly enhancing offensive strength. If Tenma acquires it, he would achieve balance across attack, defense, mana, and agility. In that case, a complete awakener would emerge. The scene shifts to the first day of the prophecy at 8 p.m. across the northern continent. Stone monuments descend from the sky, marking the beginning of the assault. In North District 2, Iberia and Itsuki Tenma run toward her home. Night has already fallen, and roughly 100 kilometers remain. He reflects that a disaster beast could appear at any moment and urges himself to reach her father quickly. Suddenly, Iberia notices something in the distance. A stone monument falls directly into the city. The attack has begun, and the pillar strikes within the urban area, causing a large explosion. He realizes evacuation must still be underway. If a disaster beast appears now, civilian casualties will be severe. Inside the city, awakeners react with alarm. The falling monument matches Elder Varder's prophecy. Panic spreads as they anticipate the arrival of a disaster beast. Watching from afar, Itsuki concludes that the assault began earlier than expected. A barrier starts forming around the city. He weighs the situation carefully. Abandoning the citizens would guarantee heavy losses, yet intervening would delay their mission. Iberia has endured the long journey without rest, clearly worried about her father. He assumed she would insist on continuing forward. Instead, she proposes helping the city first. She notes that the disaster beast within the barrier is at least level 20, and without higher-level awakeners, many lives will be lost. He agrees to change plans. They will eliminate the threat in the city before continuing. Within the barrier, a level 21 flame golem materializes before a small group of awakeners. Assessing their strength, they believe that despite the difficulty, victory should be possible. One awakener forms a rock shield and instructs the others to maintain formation while he absorbs the attacks, and they search for openings. The flame golem responds with a single, overwhelming punch. The blow sends a defender crashing backward into a structure. Before he can recover, the impact proves fatal. The remaining awakeners understand immediately. If the one with the highest defense among them was killed instantly, their chances of survival are almost non-existent. One of the archer awakeners asks what they should do. His companion immediately turns and begins fleeing, concluding that facing a disaster beast of that level would only cost them their lives. Another awakener warns him to watch out, but he continues running, focused only on escape. In an instant, the flame golem appears behind him. Panicking, he turns and unleashes a water cannon at close range. He desperately begs for his life as the attack strikes. The blast extinguishes the flames covering the golem's body. For a brief moment, he believes he has the advantage. As a water elementalist, he assumes himself to be the natural counter to a fire-attributed disaster beast and concludes the fight is over. The archer questions whether the beast has truly been defeated. Another awakener steps forward, intending to finish it off. However, the water elementalist stops them, insisting that since he handled it alone, he should be the one to end it. Before he can act, flames reignite across the golem's body. The creature restores itself and stands once more. Alarm spreads through the group. The water elementalist urges everyone to attack quickly, but the golem opens its mouth and releases an enormous torrent of fire. The awakened fighters freeze as the flames surge toward them. Just before the attack reaches them, Itsuki steps forward and deploys the black wall barrier. The shield absorbs the blaze completely, preventing casualties. Iberia instructs the awakeners to step back and leave the disaster beast to them. Itsuki tells her he will handle the golem while she assists with evacuating civilians. She agrees without hesitation and moves to guide people to safety. The barrier's durability increases slightly after withstanding the high-intensity fire attack. The awakeners, stunned by how easily the flames were blocked, question who the two of them are. Iberia states calmly that they are not saviors yet, though she intends to surpass even Taiwagen one day. Some of the awakeners react skeptically, while others question whether an ordinary awakener can truly defeat a disaster beast of that level. They observe the black ice armor forming over Itsuki's body and wonder if it is an artifact. Itsuki recalls his master's earlier advice. Menduo Izumi had warned him that the black sphere technique possessed immense power but required time to activate. Against truly strong disaster beasts, its speed would not be sufficient. If the first strike failed, landing a second would be far more difficult. He was told to reserve it as a decisive measure, only to be used when victory was certain. Returning to the present, Itsuki decides not to use the penetrating true sphere in a crowded environment. Nearby civilians notice his arrival and assume he must be a high-level awakener based on his equipment. Without responding, he leaps high into the air, deciding to suppress the golem through direct force instead. He descends with a heavy punch, driving the flame golem into the ground. Before it can recover, he activates Thunderclap Wave and strikes again, sending it skidding across the surface. He closes the distance instantly and delivers another blow. The final impact generates a powerful shockwave that disperses the remaining flames and leaves the golem motionless. From a distance, civilians observe that the disaster beast is being completely overpowered. Some assume it must have already been weakened, while others are unsettled by the fact that someone so young could dominate a level 21 creature so thoroughly. Even among the Awakeners, there is disbelief. A level 21 flame golem cannot retaliate at all, and Itsuki's speed is impossible to track with the naked eye. His raw strength appears comparable to someone far above his displayed level. As the smoke clears, Itsuki has already withdrawn. He and Iberia leave the city immediately after confirming the beast's defeat. The water elementalist claims that the victory was possible only because he had reduced the golem's strength beforehand. Others quietly disagree, having witnessed the difference in power firsthand. While running toward their original destination, Itsuki reflects on the encounter. Even against the disaster beast of that level, he was unable to secure an instant kill. The realization troubles him. To face what lies ahead, he will need greater attack power. The scene shifts to day 1 of the prophecy. 10:30 p.m. Itsuki and Iberia continue running toward her father's residence. Iberia remarks that his earlier speed was remarkable, admitting she could not follow his movements with her eyes. Itsuki answers that speed alone has little meaning without sufficient power, though he adds that he has never considered Iberia slow. She suggests a possible solution to his concern. Her father's warehouse contains numerous artifacts, and among them, there should be one capable of increasing attack power. Considering Itsuki's strength and his position as Minduo Izumi's student, she believes her father would not object to lending him one. She becomes visibly amused at the thought of Itsuki equipped with a new artifact. He questions her reaction, uncertain what she is imagining. Dismissing it, she urges him to hurry so she can request an appropriate artifact as soon as they arrive. As they continue, Itsuki reflects that although he intentionally reduced his pace, Iberia must still be straining to keep up. Without further comment, he lifts her with one arm and accelerates. Surprised, she protests, but he explains that conserving energy is important. If they encounter a calamity in a fatigued state, neither of them will be able to fight properly. He increases his speed, telling her to hold on as they make up for lost time. The scene shifts again to 11:05 p.m. They arrive near the secluded house deep within the woods. Iberia expresses relief at finally reaching their destination. Itsuki questions why her father chose to live so far from town, noting that the urban area would be safer. She explains that her father prefers isolation to concentrate on crafting. Although the structure appears to be an ordinary wooden house, its defenses are far from simple. Traps are installed throughout the surrounding perimeter. Itsuki recalls sensing faint magical fluctuations earlier and understands that the area is protected by detection-based mechanisms. Iberia reassures him that as long as he follows her path precisely, none of the traps will activate. Privately, Itsuki considers that he could avoid them using his own detection ability. He moves cautiously behind her. Moments later, she steps onto a concealed trigger. The magical fluctuation intensifies immediately. Iberia realizes her mistake, acknowledging that she forgot about one of the more dangerous traps. Itsuki questions whether she is certain this is truly her home. She confirms it, but warns that the activated defense is the most troublesome one. The mana concentration in the area surges. In response to the disturbance, a humanoid artifact materializes before them, an epic-grade iron golem, fully armed and ready to engage. Itsuki observes the humanoid construct in front of him and realizes that even advanced artifacts stand among the defenses surrounding Iberia's home. The iron golem moves immediately, advancing toward Iberia with overwhelming force. He steps in before the strike can land and meets the golem's punch head-on. The collision forces him backward across the ground. The impact confirms his assessment of its strength. Since the construct exists to protect Iberia's father, destroying it with a piercing sphere would be excessive. He needs a cleaner solution. He asks Iberia whether there is a way to stop it without causing irreparable damage. She tells him to target the karmic stone embedded in its chest, explaining that it serves as the golem's power source. Removing it will shut the artifact down. Activating Thunder Wave, Itsuki accelerates. Knowing the weak point simplifies the encounter. The golem unleashes a continuous barrage of heavy blows, but his speed allows him to evade each one with narrow margins. Weaving through its strikes, he reaches its chest and extracts the karmic stone in a single motion. The iron golem immediately loses power and collapses. Holding up the stone, he asks Iberia whether this is sufficient. Before she can respond, a presence appears behind him. A blade descends without warning. Iberia quickly calls out to stop the attacker. Itsuki turns at the last moment and evades. What unsettles him is not the strike itself, but the fact that he sensed no magical fluctuation beforehand. The man withdraws his attack upon recognizing Iberia. He explains that he mistook them for intruders. Itsuki studies him carefully. Even as he watches, the man's sword vanishes from sight without a trace. Iberia introduces him as Bakuto Jasuk and explains that Itsuki Tenma is her partner. Before she can elaborate further, Itsuki asks directly about her father's location. She tells him her father is in the back and advises caution. Bakuto remarks that the old artisan does not appear to be in a good mood. Iberia rushes ahead and announces her achievement. She passed the qualifiers, ranking 4th in the region on nightmare difficulty, and reminds her father of his promise to let her choose any artifact she wants. Instead of praise, she receives a firm slap. The sudden blow leaves her stunned. Tears form in her eyes as she asks why. Her father demands that she return the dragon gear she took without permission. She insists that she only borrowed the epic artifact. He responds that the dragon gear causes irreversible damage if worn too long, and warns her that taking it again without consent will not be tolerated. Hurt and angry, she declares she will never use his artifacts again and storms off. The artisan then turns his attention to Itsuki and asks whether he is Izumi's second student. Itsuki introduces himself formally and explains that his master sent him to protect Mr. Aiden due to the prophecy of a massive calamity in the north. The artisan states that he is already aware. He remarks that Izumi rarely accepts disciples and questions why someone so ordinary in appearance was chosen. After examining Itsuki more closely, his expression shifts to surprise. He asks whether Itsuki's level is fixed. After carefully scanning Itsuki, Iberia's father questions whether he is using a karma artifact to falsify his displayed statistics. Itsuki denies it. The artisan studies him in silence and begins to understand why Menduo Izumi specifically requested this item. He remarks that Izumi is a man who calculates gains and losses precisely and rarely acts without expecting something in return. Itsuki explains that his master only instructed him to guard Aiden and never mentioned any reward. The artisan clarifies that Izumi contacted him directly. In exchange for allowing his disciple to serve as protection, he requested that a particular karma artifact be given to that disciple. Itsuki realizes that this arrangement was made for his sake. Even so, he states that he would protect Aiden regardless of compensation. The artisan responds that he does not mind parting with the item, as he has many artifacts in his possession. He admits he was initially confused about why Izumi chose what he considered a failure. Itsuki asks what he means. The artisan produces a cracked crystal. It was originally crafted to draw out an awakener's attack power to its absolute limit. However, a fracture formed during its creation. Its rank became undefined, and a broken effect was added. Itsuki quickly understands the flaw. Because the artifact accumulated critical rate resets every time its user levels up, it becomes impractical for normal awakeners who grow through leveling. The artisan confirms this. That is why he was puzzled by the request. But after observing Itsuki's condition, the reasoning becomes clear. Since Itsuki never levels up, the artifact's drawback does not apply to him. As he continues defeating Calamity Spirit beasts, his critical rate will steadily increase without ever resetting. Eventually, it could reach 100%, amplifying every attack by 10 times. Itsuki considers the conditions carefully. His critical rate only rises when defeating enemies with higher attack power than his own. The requirement is strict, but manageable with the right approach. He decides to think of a counter-strategy after surviving the current raid. He accepts and consumes the broken critical crystal. The artifact integrates without rejection. The artisan observes that it has equipped properly, confirming its compatibility. Itsuki acknowledges that he had been struggling with insufficient attack power and states that this will significantly improve his combat potential. The artisan turns away, explaining that he forges artifacts while others use them to fight Calamity Spirit beasts. Both roles serve the same purpose, the survival of humanity. Gratitude is unnecessary. He adds that unless someone already knew his location, no beast would deliberately target such a remote place. For now, they should rest. Without warning, a massive portal opens in the sky above the forest. From within it, a monument-like structure descends and crashes down. At the same time, a green barrier expands outward, sealing the area. Iberia stares upward in shock. unable to understand why a barrier has formed around such a remote location. Her father immediately considers the implications. Only the commanders-in-chief of the 5 continents should know where he resides. He questions whether the monument's appearance here is coincidence or the result of deliberate targeting. Bakuto Jasuk draws his sword and instructs Itsuki to step back, warning that calamity spirit beasts are approaching. Itsuki confirms that they are already on the move. He senses multiple presences advancing at extreme speed. At first he counts 6, then realizes there are 8. Moments later, several level 14 one-horned demons emerge before them. One lunges directly at Itsuki. He intercepts it smoothly, catching the attack and driving his blade through the demon in a single motion. The creature collapses instantly. More demons rush in from different angles. While evading their attacks, Itsuki assesses the situation calmly. Opponents of this level pose no true threat. Techniques like Lotus Explosion could eliminate them all at once. However, Jasuk might withstand the shockwave, but Aiden and Iberia are sheltering nearby. Using such a wide area technique recklessly could place them at risk. Instead, he maneuvers away from the shed and draws the demons toward the forest, intending to create distance before finishing them. As he moves, he senses another surge of mana, far denser than the rest. He pauses. This presence is on a different level. A 2-horned guardian beast demon manifests before him, its aura far heavier than the lower-class creatures. Far beyond the battlefield, within the demon realm, one of the 8 demon kings, Enro, reports to the demon god that the first wave of lower-class slaves has been teleported into the human realm. He asks which of the 8 demon kings should lead the main force. The demon god explains that during his previous descent into the human realm, he left behind an eye. Through it, he has identified the presence of an important individual. That person must be captured. Enro inquires whether a demon king should handle this task. The demon god declines. Deploying a demon king risks destroying the very eye he left behind. Instead, he assigns the matter to a demon general. The command of the main invading force, however, will be entrusted to Enshokuma, one of the 8 demon kings. It has been a long time since Enshokuma consumed a living human, and the demon god expects that hunger will sharpen his resolve. The scene returns to Iberia's village. A scream echoes from inside the house. Itsuki immediately recognizes Iberia's voice. He considers the possibility that a disaster beast has breached the interior. At that moment, the 2-horned guardian demon launches a powerful strike toward him. Itsuki activates black ice armor and blocks the blow head-on. The force travels through his guard, confirming that the demon's attack power exceeds that of the lesser creatures. As the demon prepares another assault, Itsuki decides to end the exchange quickly. If he defeats an opponent with higher attack power than his own, his newly acquired artifact should increase his critical rate. He releases Piercing Sphere at close range. The spear-like projection penetrates the demon's head instantly, killing it before it can react. A notification confirms that his critical rate has increased by 1%. The result aligns with his expectation. Without hesitation, he tells Jasuk that he will handle the beast that entered the house and leaves the remaining demons to him. Jasuk acknowledges while continuing to cut down the one-horned demons with steady efficiency. Itsuki heads toward the shed where Iberia and her father were sheltering. Inside, Iberia has already been injured and struggles to stand. Without the dragon gear, she recognizes she cannot overpower the intruder. As the demon advances again, she calls out for help. Before it can strike, her father steps forward and swings his hammer into the creature with precise timing. Despite being in a non-combat class, he shows no hesitation. The demon turns its attention to him. As it prepares to attack, he states calmly that he will leave the rest to Tenma. Itsuki arrives at that moment, intercepting the demon's arm and driving his black ice blade through its chest. The creature collapses. He apologizes for the delay, explaining that he needed to clear the outer threats first. Iberia's father asks about the situation outside. Itsuki concentrates and senses no remaining magical fluctuations. He concludes that Jasuk has likely eliminated the remaining disaster beasts. They step outside to confirm. The area has fallen silent. The one-horned demons lie defeated across the clearing. Iberia looks at the aftermath, surprised that Jasuk managed to eliminate them alone. Jasuk warns them not to lower their guard. As long as the barrier remains intact, disaster beasts will continue spawning endlessly, and over time their strength will only increase. He states that he intends to head toward the barrier, eliminating as many as possible along the way, and destroy it himself. If any slip past him, the others will need to respond. Itsuki refuses. He states calmly that he will eliminate every disaster beast within the barrier and asks Jasuk to remain behind to protect Aiden and Iberia. Iberia's father studies him closely. There is no hesitation in Itsuki's eyes, only a steady intensity. He agrees to entrust the barrier's destruction to Tenma. Jasuk cautions that a green barrier typically indicates significantly stronger disaster beasts and asks whether Itsuki is certain. Itsuki confirms without elaboration and accelerates toward the barrier at extreme speed. As he runs, he experiences a rare sense of clarity. This battlefield will allow him to fight without restraint. Iberia attempts to follow, insisting that as his partner, she should stand beside him. Her father stops her firmly. He tells her that she and Tenma are walking entirely different paths. A true team supports and compensates for each other's weaknesses. At present, she cannot support him in a battle of this scale. If she forces herself into it, she risks becoming a liability. He adds that Tenma is unlike others of his generation. When facing disaster beasts, there is something distinct in his gaze, an intensity that suggests deep-seated hatred rather than fear. Meanwhile, Itsuki detects 5 disaster beasts emerging from the barrier. Their mana signatures confirm they have only just appeared. Eliminating them quickly will restore his reserves. Without slowing down, he activates Lotus Blast and releases it directly into their formation. The explosion engulfs the beasts, erasing them instantly. He notes that the earlier 2-horned guardian's durability had required an excessive amount of mana to defeat, but he refuses to allow even a single creature to reach the village. The explosion shockwave is visible from afar. Back at the house, Iberia recognizes the scale of the blast as Itsuki's technique. Jasuk silently questions how someone displayed as level 0 can produce such power and considers whether a hidden debuff might explain his inability to level up. Reaching the perimeter, Itsuki slows and studies the green barrier carefully. The mana within feels denser than anything he has encountered so far. His detection ability struggles to penetrate it, preventing him from gauging the number or exact strength of the disaster beasts inside. Recalling prior knowledge, he understands that the barrier's color indicates a higher range of levels than those he has faced up to now. He considers the potential gains. Defeating every beast within could yield substantial growth in power. He then summons his Death Hound. The creature materializes beside him and releases a low growl. Itsuki runs a hand over its head and states that it will receive the accumulated experience later. For now, it is to remain still and wait for his command. Standing before the barrier, he fixes his focus on the space beyond it. Every disaster beast inside is his target. The scene shifts to prediction day 1. 11:30 p.m. Choha informs her father, Menduo Izumi, that the awakened guards have arrived. A blue-haired knight steps forward and formally introduces himself as Kei Kirajima, a level 63 wind elementalist and first-class savior. From this moment on, he will serve as a protector. Izumi thanks him for coming. Choha reports that, in addition to Kirajima, 5 third-class saviors and 3 second-class saviors have also assembled. However, Akira Hiten has not yet appeared. Izumi explains that Hiten was assigned to guard the perimeter. Choha recounts that 6 hours earlier he confirmed he was on his way, but subsequent attempts to contact him failed. With massive steals falling across the northern province since earlier that evening, she suspects he may have encountered trouble. Izumi remains composed. An ordinary disaster beast would not threaten Akira Hiten. As one of the 6 pillars among the special class saviors, his strength stands apart. She is instructed to keep attempting contact. Only a special class savior can reliably confront the scale of disaster beasts expected here. Kirajima questions whether the special class saviors are being overestimated. No matter how powerful Wei-Jin-Ti and Akira Hiten may be, they are still human. He believes the gap between first class and special class cannot be insurmountable. Izumi replies that confidence is valuable, but such assumptions often come from those who have never faced a truly overwhelming disaster beast. At that moment, a portal tears open in the sky above them. A massive steel descends. Kirajima instinctively draws his sword. The appearance signals the arrival of a disaster beast. Izumi stands calmly, acknowledging that it has finally begun. Choha confirms she still cannot reach Hiten. Kirajima states that if a special class cannot arrive in time, then the first class will simply handle it themselves. Inwardly, he resolves to prove that his rank stands on equal ground. The scene shifts inside the green barrier. Itsuki advances with a Death Hound at his side. The landscape appears unchanged from the outside, yet the atmosphere feels heavier. An intangible pressure lingers in the air. Activating mana detection, he confirms that fluctuations inside the barrier are clear, but the outside world is completely obscured. The interior and exterior exist as separated spaces. He identifies 5 distinct mana signatures ahead and determines their approximate positions. Instructing the Death Hound to remain where it is, he allows it to consume any beasts that attempt to flee. Once satisfied it understands, he prepares to move. Activating Thunderbreaker, Roaring Wave, Itsuki accelerates deeper into the barrier, ready to engage. Meanwhile, multiple disaster beasts charge toward Itsuki at full speed. As they close the distance, he raises a black ice wall and reshapes it into a blade. With a single swing, he cuts down the first beast through sheer force. Without pause, he steps forward and cleaves the second in two. The remaining creatures are dispatched just as efficiently, their bodies falling before they can mount another attack. Ahead, a 2-horned beast lunges. Itsuki leaps upward, avoiding the strike, and releases a piercing sphere midair. The compressed energy tears straight through the creature's torso. It collapses the moment it hits the ground. Landing lightly, he checks his status. His critical rate has increased again, now at 3%. Statistically, that would amount to roughly 3 critical strikes per 100 attacks. He notes it without expectation and shifts his attention to the towering steel nearby. Seeing one this close is new. If destroying it collapses the barrier, a single decisive blow should suffice. Just as he prepares to move, he senses another presence. There is still one enemy remaining. He reduces his speed and stops. In the next instant, several tentacles shoot out from behind the steel, striking at the space where he had been moments earlier. He evades, narrowly avoiding contact. Had he not detected the mana fluctuation in advance, the attack would have pierced him. The creature had concealed itself behind the steel. Unlike the others, its presence feels different, more controlled, more deliberate. This is not the same type of disaster beast he faced earlier. The scene shifts back to the village. Iberia stands outside, watching the barrier in the distance. Beside him, Jacek tells him that even Tenma may not be able to stop every disaster beast. It is safer to remain indoors. Iberia wonders aloud whether he will one day cause Itsuki's death by being unable to keep up. Jacek reassures him that the master has a tendency to exaggerate. Still, Iberia cannot shake the feeling that he has been nothing but a burden. Jacek explains that the disaster beasts within a green barrier range between levels 20 and 50. He asks whether Iberia has the confidence to defeat even a level 26 beast. Iberia admits he does not. Jacek tells him not to be discouraged. At that age, he himself did not even have the courage to enter a green barrier. The difference between gray and green barriers is not simply numerical. Beasts within gray barriers lack intelligence and act purely on instinct. They are dangerous, but predictable. Within a green barrier, however, intelligent disaster beasts can exist, creatures capable of thought and strategy. He mentions a specific example, Square General 336, level 34. Among Tenma's generation, only a few could stand against a beast of that rank. The reason Iberia struggles is not immaturity, but the fact that Tenma's strength far exceeds the norm. The scene returns inside the barrier. Square General 336, level 34, steps forward from behind the steel and faces Itsuki directly. The creature observes him closely, noting how quickly its presence was detected. Itsuki recognizes it as one of the intelligent disaster beasts rumored to exist within green barriers. The beast studies him in return, dismissing him as weak based on his visible level, interpreting his steady posture as fear. Itsuki, however, remains composed. He has long wanted to confirm something about intelligent disaster beasts. Since this one can speak, it can answer. The creature allows him to ask. Itsuki looks directly at it and asks a single question. Does it feel pain? The beast's expression hardens. Anger spreads across its face at the question. It declares that no human could possibly make it feel pain and rises high into the air. From above, blade-like tentacles extend outward and descend toward Itsuki in a sweeping assault. It claims that inflicting pain is the privilege of its kind alone. Itsuki evades the incoming strikes and launches himself upward. Closing the distance in a single motion, he drives a punch into the creature's chest. The impact sends the beast crashing into the ground below. For a brief moment, he wonders if the blow was decisive. The answer comes immediately. The creature's mana swells instead of fading. The tentacles surge again, faster than before. Even the antennae guiding its movements have accelerated. Itsuki adjusts his rhythm. Despite the increase, he still maintains the advantage in speed. He counters with repeated strikes, but the resistance beneath his fists is far greater than expected. He cannot sever its head, and the damage remains shallow. The beast observes him closely, noting that someone of his displayed level should not be capable of such speed. It questions what his true level is. Without waiting for an answer, it leaps once more and unleashes another barrage. No matter how fast he moves, it regards him as insignificant. The assault continues in rapid succession. Itsuki avoids each strike by narrow margins, weaving between the descending blades. The beast grows irritated, insisting that 100 weak hits would mean nothing, while a single clean strike from it would end the fight. Itsuki steps in and throws another heavy punch, but the creature anticipates the angle and counters. He blocks at the last moment, yet the force drives him into the ground. Before he can fully rise, another tentacle crashes down. He rolls aside and regains distance, maintaining eye contact. The beast studies the current flowing around him and concludes that it is merely his skill enhancing his speed. It decides to wait until his magic reserves are depleted. Itsuki advances again, analyzing the creature's structure. The antennae are not a skill, but a physical organ, which explains why overmimesis does not activate against them. He resumes striking, counting the blows internally. The 18th, perhaps the 19th. The exact number begins to blur as the exchange intensifies. The beast retaliates once more, declaring the effort meaningless. Itsuki withdraws just beyond the arc of the counterattack. His magic is thinning after continuous skill usage, and his stamina is steadily draining. If his speed declines, the balance will shift immediately. He makes a decision. Rather than conserve energy, he will commit everything to offense. Increasing attack frequency is the only path forward. If even one critical strike lands, the outcome will change. Closing in again, he activates the broken critical crystal. His fists drive repeatedly into the creature's chest in relentless succession. Each strike follows the last without pause. He focuses on maintaining rhythm and pressure. The probability is low, but repetition is his only option. Amid the barrage, a tentacle slips through the opening and pierces into him. The beast regards the reckless charge as foolish, questioning whether this was the method he intended to use to make it feel pain. Itsuki exhales softly. The beast notes that he is still alive and observes that his defense appears higher than expected. Without responding verbally, Itsuki condenses his remaining power into his fist, single point. The moment he has been waiting for arrives. He drives his fist into the creature's chest. The impact triggers a critical strike. Energy tears through the beast's body. Blood bursts outward as the force lifts it off the ground and hurls it backward. It crashes through several trees before slamming into the trunk of a larger one. For a moment, it struggles to steady itself, unable to understand the sudden surge of power. Itsuki watches carefully. The creature is more durable than anticipated. Yet as the critical strike lands, a surge of unfamiliar sensations rises within him: satisfaction, heightened focus, and a sharp exhilaration. Despite the blood flowing from his own wound, pain feels distant, muted beneath the intensity of the moment. He approaches the fallen beast and looks down at it. Grasping its head, he applies steady pressure and asks whether it felt pain from the blow. The creature, shaken, begins to reassess him. Humans were supposed to be fragile. The strength he displayed does not align with the level he showed. Itsuki increases the pressure. Unlike the mindless beast before, this one reacts. Its body trembles, and its voice breaks under strain. He notes the difference. Intelligent disaster beasts respond to suffering. Their reactions are distinct. The pressure builds further. Bone begins to fracture. With a final surge of force, Itsuki crushes the creature's head. Blood and fragments scatter across the ground. The body falls still. The battle ends. He steps back, breathing slowly. The heightened sensation fades, replaced by the sharp, searing pain from the wound in his abdomen. Now that the immediate danger has passed, his body begins to register the damage. He turns toward the steel. The barrier surrounding the area has grown transparent, indicating no disaster beasts remain within. Only the structure sustaining it stands. He strikes the steel once. Cracks spread instantly, and it shatters into fragments. After a brief pause beside the remains, he reflects that it was less durable than expected. Before returning to Iberia, there is one more thing to confirm. He calls for the Death Hound. The creature emerges with a low roar. Its size has increased noticeably. Its level has risen by 3, granting an additional 150 stat points. As its level climbs, its body grows accordingly. Itsuki studies it with interest. If the growth continues at this rate, the hound's eventual size will be considerable. The prospect is worth observing. The scene shifts to prophecy, day 1, 1:35 a.m. inside the village. The green barrier dissolves into nothing. Iberia watches as it fades and realizes the battle has ended. Itsuki has succeeded. Beside him, Jusuk notes the time. Destroying a green barrier in roughly 10 minutes is unusual. Even if no intelligent disaster beasts have been present, the speed alone is significant. At minimum, Itsuki's strength now surpasses what his own had been in the past. The scene returns to the forest. Itsuki stands beside the death hound, his breathing unsteady. The extended travel and continuous combat have drained nearly all his stamina. Blood loss has pushed his body close to its limit. He instructs the hound to track the traces of his magic and return to Iberia. The creature lets out a long howl before setting off. The sound reaches the village. Jusuk hears it clearly. The cry resembles that of a calamity beast, yet the barrier has already disappeared. He immediately tells Iberia to return to his room. Iberia hesitates. The sound feels familiar. The howl grows louder as it approaches. Sensing its presence, Jusuk draws his sword and prepares to intercept whatever emerges from the forest. If it is a calamity beast, he will cut it down before it reaches the village. Branches snap as the death hound breaks through the trees. Jusuk swings. At the last moment, Iberia recognizes the creature and shouts for him to stop. It is the same hound Itsuki had taken as a Shikigami days earlier. Jusuk halts his blade just short of impact. The hound slows, and Itsuki's body slides from its back, falling onto the ground. Jusuk studies the creature. Shikigami are typically bound to specific users, and their levels do not increase. Yet this one has grown stronger. Combined with Itsuki's unusual combat ability and the range of skills he displays, the situation does not align with ordinary rules. Iberia runs to Itsuki's side and kneels. His clothes are soaked in blood. Itsuki manages to speak briefly, asking to rest. Panic rises in Iberia's voice, but Jusuk checks his breathing and confirms that he is still alive. The injuries are severe, but not fatal, provided treatment is given immediately. He asks for the Kodama bandages. Iberia lifts Itsuki carefully and carries him inside. After some time, the wound is wrapped and stabilized. As Iberia works, he reflects on the difference in their strength. In direct combat, he may never reach Itsuki's level. However, there are roles that only he can fulfill. His class is Wind Elementalist, capable of manipulating air and currents. It offers both offensive and supportive abilities. Yet his gift, Heal Focus, rank 2, reduces the damage of wind element attacks while increasing the recovery speed of wind element healing skills. It is not suited for frontline combat and can only restore himself or allies. He once resented this limitation and avoided using it. Now, he chooses otherwise. For Itsuki's sake, he resolves to use his gift as many times as necessary. Iberia activates her wind element. A current of gentle air forms around her hands as she uses C-rank skill, Heal Wind. The flow wraps around Itsuki's injured body, accelerating recovery. She focuses entirely on stabilizing him, urging his wounds to close for the sake of their partnership. The scene shifts. Prophecy, day 1, 1:35 a.m. near the residence of Menduo Izumi. A new barrier expands from the fallen stone monument. Its color is deep purple. Inside the barrier, Kekurajima is struck by a powerful blow. The impact sends him crashing through a wall before he collides with a tree. Choha rushes to him and immediately begins treatment, trying to stabilize his condition while asking about the situation beyond the dust-filled air. Kurajima struggles to respond. The enemy's build, defense, speed, and raw strength are beyond what he expected. Even a special grade savior, in his estimation, would struggle against such a creature. Through the settling dust, a towering figure steps forward. Minotaur Warrior number 14 of the Ox tribe, level 81. The creature identifies Izumi at once and states that encountering its target so quickly is fortunate. With this progress, there would be no need to involve Lord Sarigami. It throws a punch directly toward Izumi. Izumi remains calm. If she is the target, then the rest of the village may be spared. The impact generates a violent shockwave, sending debris outward. Before the blow can fully connect, a hand intercepts it. Akira Hiten stands between them, stopping the Minotaur strike with one arm. Izumi remarks that he is late. Hiten apologizes briefly and tells her to leave the rest to him. The Minotaur dismisses him, but Hiten moves first. A single punch lands against the creature's head. The force shatters it instantly, ending the confrontation in one strike. Kirijima watches in disbelief. The gap between first-class and special-grade saviors is no longer theoretical to him. The power displayed surpasses ordinary human limits. Choha approaches, believing the crisis resolved. He states that it has only begun. The scene shifts again. Prophecy, Day 1. 11:40 p.m. The barrier near Izumi's residence shifts from purple to red. Inside the red barrier, a red flame demon king, level 37, materializes. It expresses interest in watching how Lord Sarigami will torment humanity. A white Oni, level 49, appears nearby. Then a third presence emerges. Demon General, Grudge King of Frostbite, level 87. The General orders restraint. Their mission is not indiscriminate destruction, but the capture of a specific individual. Failure is not acceptable. The Red Flame Demon King questions why they were not sent directly to the target's barrier instead of sharing one with Lord Sarigami. The General explains that if all three had appeared together, the barrier would have turned purple and drawn immediate attention. The red barrier created by one of the 8 Demon Kings, Sarigami, will naturally attract the strongest members of the human race. While attention focuses on Sarigami, their own objective can be completed without interference. The Red Flame Demon King asks whether the destination is known. The General confirms it is. Lording will guide them. An evil eye left within the human world provides coordinates and even vision of its surroundings. At this moment, that evil eye is located at the same place as their intended target. The scene shifts to Prophecy, Day 1, 11:35 p.m. Inside Iberia's house. Itsuki lies unconscious on the bed. Within his mind, he finds himself as a child again, standing before his mother. He tells her that he finally found a disaster beast capable of feeling pain, just like humans do, and that he crushed its skull. He believes this brings him closer to avenging her death. His mother stops him gently. She tells him there are things more important than revenge. He questions what could possibly matter more than wiping out every disaster beast. She answers that power should not be used for vengeance, but to protect the people one loves. He rejects the idea. He cannot forgive the disaster beasts that killed his parents. In his mind, every last one of them must be destroyed. Her figure begins to fade. She tells him it is time for her to go and asks him not to let hatred consume him. He calls out to her, trying to stop her from disappearing. There is still so much he wants to say. She vanishes. He drops to his knees. A voice echoes across the sky above him, mocking the tears he sheds for the dead and calling such grief typical of a lesser being. Itsuki looks up and recognizes the presence. Linga remarks that Itsuki only takes the form of a child when he is with his mother in these dreams. Anger surges. Itsuki declares that he will kill him. He charges forward, but Linga's figure dissipates before contact. The voice lingers, promising that he will soon experience true despair again. Itsuki shouts that no matter what it takes, he will end him. Suddenly, his eyes open. He wakes inside Iberia's house. Iberia is asleep nearby, and the death hound rests close to the bed. He realizes it was a dream. A sharp irritation pulses behind his eyes. Though they are uninjured, they ache intensely. Then he notices something else. His wounds are gone. He had been in critical condition, yet his body has recovered. Iberia must have treated him. He glances at Iberia, who fell asleep beside him after tending to his injuries. Itsuki decides to keep the death hound quiet so as not to wake him. He gestures for silence. The hound lets out a loud roar instead. Itsuki closes his eyes briefly in frustration. Iberia jolts awake, immediately preparing to defend him from what he assumes is a disaster beast. Itsuki reassures him that a presence that light would not trouble a disaster beast. Realizing Itsuki is awake, Iberia's expression shifts to relief. The treatment worked, and he is conscious once more. Iberia throws his arms around Itsuki in relief. Itsuki notices that he still has the habit of hugging people when he gets excited. Once Iberia calms down, Itsuki asks how long he was unconscious. About 3 hours, Iberia answers. It did not feel that long to him. 3 hours means it is around 3 a.m. on the second day of the prophecy. Itsuki immediately asks whether Jusuk and Aiden are safe. Iberia reassures him that no disaster beasts have appeared since the barrier was destroyed. The memory of the dream lingers. Even if it was only a dream, the words spoken there felt too vivid. The sense that something is moving behind the scenes does not fade. The scene shifts. Prophecy, Day 2, 3:03 a.m. Itsuki Tenma regains full consciousness. He rises from the bed and dresses. He cannot afford to lower his guard. Iberia remarks that he appears completely recovered. As they step outside, Itsuki considers that the reinforcements mentioned by their teacher should be arriving soon. First, he intends to check in with Jusuk. On the way, Iberia brings up the Death Hound. He assumes it is simply called Death Hound, then asks what its actual name is. He explains that a Shikigami user is free to name their Shikigami however they wish, and even offers to choose a name himself. Itsuki clarifies that he is not a Shikigami user. Iberia looks slightly disappointed at that. Internally, Itsuki decides firmly that he will not allow Iberia to name the creature. They meet Jusuk outside. Jusuk observes that Kodama bandages alone would not have restored Itsuki so quickly. Iberia must have finally used his true ability. Itsuki turns to Iberia and asks whether he is healer type, since he did not notice any skills being used earlier. Iberia admits that he can use offensive wind skills as well, though their damage output is limited. Itsuki then asks Jusuk whether any other saviors have arrived. Jusuk answers that none have. Itsuki explains that their teacher said nearby saviors were being dispatched. With an entire day past, they should be close. Jusuk reminds him that the village lies deep within the forest. Without Iberia's guidance, even Itsuki would not have reached it quickly. The logic is sound, yet Itsuki cannot shake the unease building inside him. It feels as though something hostile is drawing nearer. Meanwhile, deeper within the forest, 3 young warriors run toward the village. One of them asks Kobayashi how much farther they must go. The blonde companion estimates only a few more kilometers remain. Once they complete this mission, they will finally be promoted from apprentices to third-class saviors. The brown-haired warrior remarks that the location is far more remote than expected. It is surprising that the greatest crafter in the northern province resides so deep within the woods. Suddenly, their pink-haired companion halts and tells them to stop. They immediately comply. When asked what she sensed, she explains that something is approaching from ahead. Moments later, 2 figures appear before them. The Red Flame Demon King stands at the forefront, accompanied by a white Oni. The demon notes calmly that they were perceptive enough to notice his presence. The brown-haired warrior draws his sword and calls for battle positions. The 3 apprentices take formation. The Red Flame Demon King studies them and asks where they are heading in such a hurry, and whether their destination happens to be the same as his. The Red Flame Demon King lifts a hand and releases a concentrated fireball. It strikes the brown-haired warrior directly. The impact is instantaneous. His body is consumed in heat and reduced to molten remains before he can react. The Demon King observes the result with detached interest, noting how fragile humans are if a single fireball can erase them. Nearby, the white Oni overwhelms the second apprentice. With brute force, it tears through his defense and slams him into the ground, ending the fight just as quickly. The pink-haired girl stands alone. She demands to know where they came from, pointing out that there is no barrier nearby. The Red Flame Demon King replies that they traveled a long distance to reach this place. At that moment, the Demon General, Grudge King of Frostbite, arrives. He orders the Flame Demon King to stop. Killing them was not permitted. The Flame Demon King protests that he was merely relieving boredom. In response, the general conjures a wall of crystalline ice around him. Freezing energy tightens, locking his body in place. The warning is clear. Disobedience will not be tolerated. The Flame Demon King quickly concedes, and the spell is lifted. The pink-haired girl, still alive, realizes she has not been killed. For a brief moment, she believes she has been spared. The Flame Demon King questions whether she possesses some special trait, since only the target and the owner of the magic eye were meant to be kept alive. The Demon General clarifies that she has no such significance. He simply wishes to test a new ability granted by Linga. He releases a wave of condensed black energy. It strikes her and seeps in her body. For a moment she collapses, motionless. The Flame Demon King assumes she has died, but the general explains that she is undergoing demonization. Her eyes open again. The process reshapes her allegiance. Humans subjected to demonization become completely subservient to Linga. In effect, she now belongs to them. She kneels before the Demon General and awaits orders. He instructs her to conceal her identity and remain undercover within human society until the day Linga descends. Later, she is to report that her team was attacked by disaster beasts in the forest, and that she survived only because her companions sacrificed themselves. She accepts the command. The general dismisses her. Moments later, she appears to regain her normal awareness and flees toward the village, outwardly acting as a lone survivor. The Flame Demon King questions the usefulness of recruiting someone so weak. The demon general explains that she is only one among tens of thousands who have already been demonized, including awakened individuals. When Linga unifies the world, they will serve an essential role. He orders the Flame Demon King to stop wasting time. Their mission takes priority. The scene shifts. Prophecy, Day 2, 3:05 a.m. Jusuk stands near an iron golem, evaluating its specifications. Its combat capacity is roughly equivalent to a level 30 awakened. It should help offset their shortage of manpower. Iberia remarks that with Jusuk and its Suki present, such measures might not even be necessary. Jusuk then asks where Tenma has gone. Iberia explains that its Suki headed to the workshop. He wanted to ask the old craftsman something about the critical crystal. Inside the house, Iberia's father listens carefully as Itsuki recounts the battle with the disaster beast. Itsuki explains that he landed a critical hit during the fight. At the time, his critical rate had only been 3%. After defeating the creature, it rose to 4%. Iberia's father notes that succeeding with such a low probability was largely a matter of luck. Itsuki admits that he has thought the same. However, the critical strike was not the only unusual event. After landing it, Itsuki experienced a distinct shift in awareness. His concentration deepened, and he entered a strange state where everything around him felt sharply defined. He asks whether this could be an effect of the critical crystal. Iberia's father studies him and describes the sensation precisely. Heightened perception of every detail, paired with complete emotional calm. Itsuki confirms that this matches his experience. Iberia's father concludes that Itsuki entered a flow state. He explains that a flow state occurs when someone becomes fully immersed in a task. Perception of time distorts, concentration and excitement peak simultaneously, and the mind operates with unusual clarity. It is sometimes described as being in the zone. Artists, athletes, or students may experience a mild version of it during intense focus. For awakened individuals, however, the effect is far more significant. Their senses sharpen beyond normal limits, and their overall stats and skill efficiency temporarily rise to approximately 120% of their base values. Itsuki is surprised. Neither his teacher nor other awakened ever mentioned such a phenomenon, and he has never met anyone who claimed to have entered that state. Iberia's father explains that only a handful of people are capable of achieving it. It requires refined skill, a clear mind, and a considerable amount of luck. Without all three conditions aligned, entering a flow state is impossible. He adds that among awakened across the 5 continents, including Weijin T, there is no one known to enter a flow state at will. He himself first experienced it 2 years after awakening. For Itsuki to reach it after only a month is highly unusual. Midway through the explanation, Itsuki's attention shifts. He senses 3 powerful sources of mana approaching. Iberia's father assumes they are awakened dispatched by Mendu Izumi to serve as guards. But the mana signature feels different to Itsuki. It is dense, rough, and stagnant, closer to that of a disaster beast than an awakened. He decides to step outside to confirm. As he moves, he reassures himself that all disaster beasts within the barrier were eliminated and no new deployments were detected nearby. It may simply be his imagination. Outside, Iberia greets him, relieved to see him recovered. Jusuk notices the tension in Itsuki's expression. Itsuki explains that he sensed a surge of mana that felt similar to a disaster beast. Jusuk points out that no barriers are forming in the area, so that scenario should be unlikely. Iberia mentions that the Iron Golem has been reactivated and should be capable of handling any ordinary threat. Before anyone can react further, a powerful impact strikes the Iron Golem. The construct is launched backward and crashes into a nearby house. Jusuk and Itsuki immediately shift into combat readiness. 3 figures emerge into view. The Red Flame Demon King steps forward first. Beside him stand the demon general known as the Frostbite Wraith King and the White Oni. The Red Flame Demon King surveys the group and concludes that the situation will be simple. Itsuki studies the 3 figures carefully. Their presence is far denser than the disaster beasts inside the barrier. The one standing at the front radiates an overwhelming surge of magical energy unlike anything he has encountered before. The demon general turns to the Red Flame Demon King and the White Oni. He states that he will proceed to capture the target and leaves the rest to them. One instruction is made clear. The demon, I must not be destroyed. The Flame Demon King agrees without concern. Itsuki processes the word target. The most likely person is Aiden. Iberia is unsettled by the fact that the disaster beasts are speaking coherently. Jusuk steps forward to block the demon general's path. In the next instant, the general slips past them with speed that is almost imperceptible. Itsuki barely registers the movement. The displacement is so sudden that it feels as if the general simply vanished and reappeared beyond them. Jusuk immediately gives chase, determined to intercept him. Itsuki activates his power as well, focusing on preventing the general from reaching Aiden. A thick wall of ice materializes between them, cutting off pursuit. Jusuk strikes the barrier with his sword. The impact echoes sharply, but the ice holds firm. From the side, the white Oni advances toward Jusuk and launches a heavy punch. At the last moment, Jusuk pivots and blocks with his blade. The collision sends him sliding backward across the ground from the force alone. Itsuki's attention splits between the two fronts. The Red Flame Demon King closes the distance and reminds him that hesitation will cost him. A condensed projectile of red flame is released toward Itsuki. Itsuki counters by forming a wall of black ice. The fire strikes the surface and disperses in a burst of steam and heat. Without looking back, he tells Iberia to retreat from the battlefield. She complies immediately, putting distance between herself and the clash as the confrontation escalates. The remaining flames graze Itsuki's hands, leaving shallow burns. The pain is sharp but manageable. He immediately reassesses. The Demon King's skill is A rank. If he had used Thunderbreaker, he likely could have avoided the hit entirely. Instead, he relied too heavily on Black Wall and misjudged the difference in output. The Red Flame Demon King mocks the failed defense, confident that ordinary ice could never suppress his flames. For a brief moment, the Demon King studies Itsuki more closely. He considers the possibility that this might be the bearer of the Demon Eye. After scanning him, he dismisses the thought. The displayed level reads 0, and nothing about him suggests he is the target. Concluding there is no restriction, the Demon King decides he can eliminate him freely. Itsuki summons the Death Hound. The Demon King assumes Itsuki intends to fight with support, but remains unconcerned. Even multiple summons would not change the outcome in his view. Another concentrated blast of fire is released. Itsuki gives a brief instruction to the Hound, entrusting it with the next step. As he dodges the incoming attack, the Death Hound accelerates past the battlefield, heading toward the village. The Demon King notices the direction immediately. The summon is moving toward the target. He questions whether Itsuki believes he can win alone. Internally, Itsuki recognizes that the Demon King is underestimating him. If he continues appearing weaker than he is, the enemy may delay a killing strike. Meanwhile, his analysis continues to progress, now at 36%. He needs time, yet deliberately acting fearful conflicts with his instincts. Instead, he provokes the Demon King directly. Anger flares in response. The Demon King increases his output and launches another large-scale attack, abandoning any intention of restraint. Itsuki evades again and closes the distance in a burst of speed. The Demon King expands his form slightly, amplifying power, but his movement speed remains unchanged. The pattern becomes clearer, a skill-oriented, long-range type. If Itsuki can maintain close combat pressure, the advantage may shift. He drives forward and delivers a powerful kick. At the last instant, a shield of flame manifests around the Demon King's body. The strike collides against it and disperses. The Demon King anticipated the attempt. A counterattack follows immediately. This time, the flames connect directly, overwhelming Itsuki before he can fully reposition. The impact slams him into the ground with force. As he regains awareness, he acknowledges the mistake. He underestimated the opponent's intelligence. This is not a mindless disaster beast. The Demon King observed that Itsuki's speed contradicts the displayed level. The deception is noted, but he remains confident. Itsuki forces himself back to his feet. The analysis continues in the background. Because the opponent's ability is A rank, the process is slower than usual. He steadies his breathing, buying seconds wherever he can as the percentage gradually climbs. The scene shifts to Prophecy Day 2, 3:14 a.m. inside the house. The demon general steps in calmly and surveys the surroundings. His attention settles on Aiden, evaluating his history and accomplishments as a craftsman. He recalls that Aiden created 3 unique karma tools, 16 epic karma tools, and countless rare ones, recognizing him as one of the most skilled crafters among humans. Aiden listens to the summary of his achievements and interprets it as a threat, suspecting that such recognition often precedes elimination. The demon general clarifies that killing him is not the intention. As long as Aiden remains useful, his life will be spared. Aiden makes it clear that he has no interest in being controlled. Without hesitation, he attempts to take his own life rather than be captured. Before he can act, the demon general releases freezing power. A thick layer of ice spreads instantly across Aiden's body, locking him in place. The speed and precision of the technique leave no room for resistance. Aiden realizes immediately that the ability must be at least A rank or higher. His body is immobilized completely. The demon general reinforces his authority, making it clear that survival or death is no longer Aiden's choice. Nearby, Iberia remains hidden, watching the situation unfold from a distance. Fear builds as he recognizes that his father is about to be taken away. He considers launching a surprise attack, but hesitates, aware of the overwhelming difference in strength. At that moment, Itsuki's wolf Shikigami enters the house. Iberia recognizes it instantly and understands that reinforcements have arrived. The wolf leaps forward, attempting to attack the demon general. However, before the strike can land, the general reacts with precise timing. Freezing energy forms around the wolf midair, locking in place. With a single motion, he slams the immobilized Shikigami onto the ground. The demon general grows irritated, questioning how those outside allowed a mere Shikigami to slip through their defense. Aiden notices the presence of the summoned creature and realizes that help has reached them, even if only partially. Iberia, however, becomes even more unsettled. Witnessing such a powerful Shikigami fail to land a single effective blow confirms the enormous gap between them and the enemy. He understands that confronting the demon general directly would be impossible. He considers calling Itsuki for help, but recalls a warning from his father about recklessness leading to unnecessary casualties. The memory shifts his thinking. He recognizes that Itsuki was already injured before sending the Shikigami. If Itsuki had been capable of coming himself, he would have done so. Calling him now would only worsen the situation and place him at greater risk. He rejects the idea. Instead, he decides to act alone. Iberia runs out of the house with urgency, forming a new plan. He remembers a piece of equipment stored beneath his father's bed, dragon gear. With that tool, he believes there may be a chance to stand against the enemy. Back inside, the demon general senses movement and notes that someone had been hiding nearby, but fled instead of intervening. Aiden, still frozen in place, understands that the escaping figure was Iberia. Despite the danger, he feels relief that Iberia chose to retreat rather than attempt a hopeless rescue. Even with Tenma and Ju-suk working together, victory would remain uncertain. His silent hope is that Iberia does not return. Using his power, the demon general lifts Aiden's frozen body into the air. With complete control over the ice surrounding him, he prepares to move him from the location, leaving the remaining conflict outside to the Red Flame Demon King and the White Oni. The scene then shifts to the forest. The Red Flame Demon King releases another Red Flame bullet toward Itsuki. Itsuki responds by activating Black Wall, forming a protective layer while also using it to support his burned leg. Stabilizing the injured limb allows him to maintain mobility despite the damage. As the incoming flame approaches, he activates Thunderbird at the last possible moment and narrowly evades the attack. The Demon King notices that despite his injured state, Itsuki continues to avoid direct hits. However, he also observes that Itsuki's speed has slightly decreased compared to earlier. Preparing to escalate the assault, the Demon King raises both hands and begins forming a larger attack. This time, he releases red flame bullets using both arms simultaneously. Itsuki recognizes the change immediately. Before he can fully adapt, the Demon King switches to rapid-fire output, releasing multiple flame projectiles in quick succession. The number of attacks increases sharply, overwhelming the battlefield. For a brief moment, Itsuki freezes under the pressure of the incoming barrage. Instinct takes over, and he forces himself to move, dodging repeatedly despite the worsening condition of his body. Even with his speed, the volume of attacks makes evasion extremely difficult. One fireball strikes his leg, intensifying the existing injury. Another follows, slamming into him and driving him to the ground. While enduring the continuous assault, the analysis process continues in the background. The progress steadily rises, reaching 90% as the barrage continues. More fireballs connect in succession, pushing the percentage further. By the time the analysis reaches 98%, a large portion of Itsuki's body has been burned. The accumulated damage causes his body to weaken severely. As flames continue to engulf him, memories surface, recalling an earlier incident involving fire, reinforcing the sense of danger tied to the element. Observing the worsening condition, the Red Flame Demon King becomes increasingly confident. He concentrates a dense amount of flame energy into his hands and prepares a final, piercing strike. He releases the concentrated red flame bullet toward Itsuki. Just before the attack connects, the analysis completes. A blue energy forms around Itsuki from every direction, enclosing him in a protective field. The incoming piercing attack passes by and strikes the structure behind him instead, triggering a powerful explosion. The Demon King pauses, confused by the sudden change. The completed analysis reveals that Red Flame Bullet has been fully analyzed, and Black Wall has advanced to level 3. Itsuki realizes that instead of gaining a new ability, the existing skill has strengthened. The upgraded Black Wall now continuously generates ice across his body surface by consuming mana. It is capable of blocking fire element attacks of A rank and below. In addition, successfully blocking such attacks grants a surge of recovery, removing debuffs and restoring injuries while temporarily increasing overall stats. As the effects activate, his body begins healing at a rapid rate. Burned flesh repairs itself, injuries close, and his strength stabilizes. The stat increase significantly boosts his overall capability, equivalent to multiple level gains for an ordinary awakened. Once the recovery completes, Itsuki reassesses the battlefield. With the improved resistance to fire, the red flame bullets are no longer as threatening. Closing distance now becomes a viable strategy. The Red Flame Demon King continues observing, attempting to determine the nature of the defensive ability. He assumes the protection cannot be maintained indefinitely. The protective lotus-like energy surrounding Itsuki begins to open gradually. As the structure disperses, Itsuki steps forward with a fully restored body. The earlier damage has completely disappeared, and his condition has returned to peak state. The sudden recovery shocks the Demon King. The extent of the restoration exceeds his expectations. Itsuki adjusts his stance and discards the remaining damaged clothing from his upper body. The lingering memory connected to the flames strengthens his resolve, shifting his focus entirely toward defeating the opponent before moving on to rescue Aiden. His posture becomes steady and deliberate as the confrontation prepares to escalate in a close combat. Meanwhile, Jusuk is launched into the air by a powerful strike. The force sends him flying backward over a long distance. While still airborne, he recognizes the sheer strength behind the attack. Blocking it with his gear prevented a fatal outcome, but the impact alone pushed him far from the battlefield. To stop the momentum, he drives his sword into the ground. The blade scrapes through the earth, slowing his movement until he finally comes to a halt. Once steady, he pulls the sword free and quickly assesses the situation. The enemies they are facing are far beyond ordinary threats, and every second of delay increases the danger to the others. Realizing how far he's been pushed away, he prepares to return immediately. Before he can move, the white Oni appears directly in front of him. The sudden reappearance confirms that the creature deliberately followed him. Jusuk raises his sword without hesitation, shifting his focus toward defeating this opponent as quickly as possible. He understands that holding the white Oni here may buy time for Tenma to deal with the remaining enemies. At the same time, concern for his master and Iberia weighs heavily on his mind, strengthening his resolve to end the fight quickly and return to assist them. The scene then shifts to the storage area inside Iberia's father's house. Inside, Iberia searches urgently through the room, recalling that the equipment he needs should be nearby. After scanning the surroundings, he notices a box hidden beneath a table. He retrieves it and confirms that it contains the dragon gear. Upon opening the container, the equipment details become clear. The dragon gear is classified as an epic grade item, significantly increasing both attack and agility. Once worn, its special effect gradually boosts those attributes further over time, though the enhancement lasts for only a limited duration. Iberia wastes no time equipping the gear. As he secures it in place, he reminds himself to remain focused and avoid slowing down Itsuki again. He also recalls the warning given by his father. Wearing the dragon gear beyond 15 minutes causes severe side effects. Because of that limitation, he sets a strict objective to rescue his father before the time expires. With determination, Iberia leaves the storage area and runs toward the location where his father was taken. The scene shifts back to the forest. The demon general moves forward while carrying Aiden, whose frozen body remains suspended in midair by layers of ice. Aiden observes the general's calm behavior and questions whether moving at such a relaxed pace is truly safe, considering the possibility of pursuit. The demon general shows no concern. From his perspective, only a special class savior among humans could pose any real threat. Furthermore, most capable forces are currently distracted by the activities of the demon lord, reducing the likelihood of interference. Hearing this, Aiden analyzes the situation carefully. The involvement of demon lord level forces suggests that the current mission is only one part of a larger plan. Realizing this, he decides to provoke further information. He questions whether such an extensive operation was carried out solely to capture him. The demon general dismisses the idea, stating that multiple objectives exist beyond capturing a single individual. This confirms Aiden's suspicion that the attack has broader strategic purposes. Before he can continue pressing for more information, both of them detect movement nearby. The sound of footsteps approaches rapidly through the surroundings. The demon general becomes irritated, recognizing the persistence of those attempting to interfere. As the sound grows louder, Aiden turns his head toward the direction of the noise, wondering whether the approaching figure is Ju-suk or Tenma. At the same time, he understands that facing the demon general alone would make victory extremely unlikely. Without hesitation, Iberia launches himself into the air and charges toward the demon general. He commits fully to the attack, aiming directly at the figure holding his father. Midair, his focus remains fixed on reclaiming Aiden. The demon general notices the incoming strike and reacts with visible irritation. The repeated interruptions frustrate him, especially after already dealing with the Shikigami earlier. The continued interference makes him question how the others outside allowed this situation to escalate. The scene shifts back to the forest, where Itsuki continues facing the Red Flame Demon King. The Demon King observes Itsuki closely and becomes increasingly confused. Despite having been severely burned earlier, Itsuki has recovered to an extent that should not have been possible. Unable to understand the sudden recovery, the Demon King abandons further analysis and chooses to overwhelm him through force. He condenses flames around his body and initiates another rapid-fire assault, releasing a continuous barrage of crimson flame bullets. To counter this, Itsuki activates Black Wall and forms a dense black ice armor around his body. As the projectiles advance, he remains completely still, holding his position instead of evading. The fireballs strike directly against him, detonating across the armor's surface. Flames and smoke engulf the area, briefly obscuring visibility. Believing the attack to be successful, the Red Flame Demon King becomes confident. However, once the smoke disperses, Itsuki is revealed standing in place without visible damage. The strengthened Black Wall neutralizes the flames, rendering the barrage ineffective. He reinforces the black ice armor further and prepares to counterattack. Activating Thunderbreaker, he releases Thunder Roar Wave and accelerates forward with sudden speed. The Red Flame Demon King reacts with alarm. Although he increases defensive output, relying on his Crimson Flame barrier, the speed difference becomes evident once again. Itsuki advances directly into close range and prepares a focused strike. Even with the barrier deployed, he continues forward without hesitation. At the moment of impact, his attack pierces through the defensive layer. The barrier fractures under the pressure, then shatters completely. With the shield broken, the Demon King's composure begins to collapse. The sudden loss of protection shifts the momentum of the fight entirely. Fear replaces confidence. Recognizing the threat, the Red Flame Demon King attempts to retreat and calls out for assistance from the White Oni and the Frostbite Wraith King. During the retreat attempt, his footing fails. The uneven ground causes him to slip, and he falls forward, striking the ground face first. Itsuki closes the distance behind him without delay. The Demon King, desperate, attempts one more attack. However, Itsuki evades effortlessly, leaving the enemy further disoriented and unstable. As Itsuki prepares his finishing strike, a notification from the broken critical crystal appears. The message confirms that the next attack will land as a guaranteed critical hit. At the same time, a strange purple aura forms behind him. Energy gathers along his body, causing his veins and eyes to glow red as power concentrates into his next movement. The Red Flame Demon King notices the aura and reacts with visible fear. The overwhelming presence convinces him that the attack about to follow will be decisive, and the pressure of the moment forces him into panic. The Red Flame Demon King, overwhelmed by fear, drags himself backward across the ground. Panic overtakes him as he struggles to create distance. Before he can recover or launch another defense, Itsuki closes in and delivers a decisive strike. The blow lands directly on the Demon King's head with full force. The impact drives the Demon King into the ground. Immediately afterward, the flames surrounding his head fade, and his presence disappears completely. The Red Flame Demon King is eliminated. Itsuki remains standing near the fallen body. Despite the victory, he feels slight frustration. The final strike turned into a critical hit at a moment when he had intended to prolong the fight. At the same time, he recognizes that he has once again entered a flow state following the critical hit. This pattern leads him to suspect that landing a critical strike may automatically trigger the flow state condition. He checks his status through the translucent display. With the combined effects of the flow state and his skill passives, his total stats have already exceeded 2,000. At that moment, green energy begins emerging from the remains of the Red Flame Demon King. The energy condenses into an orb, indicating that the defeated Disaster Beast Karma has transformed into a collectible form. The green orb suddenly moves in a specific direction. Itsuki follows its movement with his gaze and realizes it is heading toward the forest. He questions why the Karma did not divide, since both the Shikigami and Aiden should be present in different locations. The direction of the orb suggests that only one valid life signal remains active. This possibility raises immediate concern. Without hesitation, he launches himself into the air, crossing over the black ice barrier and sprinting toward the direction of the orb. As he moves, he considers the condition of the Shikigami. Since it cannot truly die unless retrieved, the implication points toward danger involving Aiden. The scene shifts back to the forest. Before Iberia's strike can reach its target, the Demon General forms a thick barrier of black ice. Iberia's attack collides with the shield, but the damage inflicted is minimal. The failed strike surprises him. Even with the enhanced power granted by the Dragon Gear, his full-force attack fails to break through the defense. Rather than stopping, he prepares to attack again, determined to repeat the assault if necessary. The Demon General observes the persistence and remarks on Iberia's inability to recognize the difference in strength between them. Aiden reacts with alarm as he witnesses the confrontation. Anger replaces fear as he attempts to stop Iberia from continuing. He urges him to remove the Dragon Gear, remembering the severe side effects associated with prolonged use. Iberia ignores the warning and charges forward again, refusing to retreat even under threat of disownment. His decision is driven by determination to rescue his father regardless of consequences. He believed that Itsuki would have acted the same under similar circumstances. Aiden attempts to stop him once more, but before he can finish speaking, the Demon General freezes his mouth shut, preventing further interference. The Demon General expresses contempt toward the emotional attachment between them, viewing their actions as irrational. As Iberia closes the distance, the Demon General raises his hand and decides to end the interruption quickly. Condensed waves of freezing energy surge outward, capturing Iberia midair. His entire body freezes instantly, immobilized before he can react. The frozen body drops heavily to the ground. Aiden struggles to respond, but remains unable to speak due to the ice sealing his mouth. The Demon General turns his attention back to him and reinforces his dominance, making it clear that resistance is meaningless in the face of overwhelming power. Aiden watches his son helplessly, panic rising as Iberia remains frozen in place. The Dragon Gear continues running, and the equip time reaches 3 minutes, while Iberia remains immobilized under the ice. The scene shifts to Prophecy Day 2, 3:20 a.m. inside Aiden's house. The wolf Shikigami begins absorbing incoming energy. As the energy settles into its body, its level rises to 20. Shortly after, the ice that had restrained it begins to crack and fall away. The wolf frees itself completely and releases a loud roar. At that moment, Itsuki enters the house and immediately calls out to the wolf. As the wolf moves toward him, He observes the changes in its condition and recognizes that it has leveled up again, confirming that it absorbed the karma from the defeated disaster beast. He questions the wolf about Aiden and the remaining enemy. The wolf turns toward another direction, guiding his attention. Itsuki follows its gaze and notices the large opening in the wall, formed by intense freezing power. The scale of destruction indicates that a powerful ice-based ability was used recently. Sensing the lingering magical energy, he realizes the situation has escalated beyond what he expected. Without hesitation, he begins moving quickly toward the direction indicated, recognizing that waiting for Jusuk would waste valuable time. The scene shifts to the forest, where Jusuk continues his battle against the White Oni. During the exchange, Jusuk manages to cut off one of the creature's hands. However, the White Oni retaliates immediately, striking with its remaining arm. Jusuk blocks the blow using his sword, but the force pushes him backward across the ground. Before he can regain full balance, the severed limb begins regenerating. The hand he cut moments earlier reforms completely. Observing this, Jusuk identifies the opponent as a regeneration-type disaster beast, a category known for prolonged battles. At that moment, he notices a green energy orb moving through the area. Recognizing it as a karma orb, he realizes that Itsuki must have already defeated the other disaster beast. This realization strengthens his resolve to continue fighting without retreat. Carefully observing the creature's behavior, he notices that the White Oni consistently uses its arms to protect its head and neck from incoming attacks. This pattern reveals the location of its primary weak point. He attacks again, targeting the arms. Although the White Oni attempts to counter, another arm is severed during the exchange. Blood spreads across the surrounding area. Holding his stance, Jusuk concludes that destroying both arms will create a brief opening. Since regeneration requires at least a short delay, the weak point will remain exposed during that window. He executes the plan without hesitation. With successive strikes, he removes both arms, forcing the regeneration process to begin. Taking advantage of the brief delay, he moves forward and drives his blade directly into the creature's neck. A final strike follows, severing the head completely. Energy begins flowing out from the defeated body as the lifeless remains collapsed to the ground. Standing near the fallen enemy, Jusuk recognizes how difficult the battle had been despite the creature's inability to speak or strategize. Without wasting further time, he shifts his focus toward reuniting with Itsuki, understanding that the ice-controlling disaster beast remains a significant threat. He begins moving toward the direction of the forest where the remaining fight continues. The scene shifts again. Aiden remains suspended in ice while struggling to speak. His mouth is still partially frozen, limiting his ability to communicate. The demon general observes his attempts and releases the ice sealing his mouth, allowing him to speak. Aiden immediately offers to accept any condition in exchange for his son's release. The demon general responds calmly, stating that controlling the ice from that distance is no longer possible. He also points out that events have already progressed beyond negotiation. He then reveals knowledge about the armor Iberia is wearing. According to him, the dragon gear was crafted using materials from the demon dragon tribe, known for possessing extremely powerful life force. Even after death, their blood, flesh, organs, and scales retain residual willpower. Equipment created from such materials carries remnants of that will. Prolonged use allows the lingering will to influence the wearer's mind. Over time, the user's consciousness becomes suppressed, eventually leading to complete loss of control. If worn too long, the user's body may ultimately be overtaken, transforming into something resembling a true dragon. The scene shifts to the past, returning to Prophecy Day 1 while Itsuki is heading elsewhere. Iberia looks up at the sky, hoping for Itsuki's safety. Beside him, Jusuk observes his reaction and notices how strongly Iberia admires Itsuki. Iberia confirms this, expressing his desire to become someone like him. Jusuk questions this admiration, pointing out that Iberia has already met many remarkable individuals, including Aiden, Taiwagen, and Izumi Menduo. He also mentions his own reputation and battle experience, which exceed Itsuki's, and asks why Iberia specifically wants to become like Itsuki. Iberia is caught off guard by the question and struggles to answer. Seeing his confusion, Jusuk places a hand on his shoulder and reassures him that it was only a casual question. Afterward, Iberia remains silent and reflects inwardly. He realizes that he has never truly thought about the reason behind his admiration for Itsuki, leaving him uncertain about his own motivations. The scene shifts further into the past, moving 10 years earlier. At that time, Iberia is happily playing with a newly received sword. His mother approaches and asks if he likes his birthday present. Iberia responds with excitement, clearly pleased with the gift. While examining the sword, he decides to give it a grand name, declaring it to be the Justice Unbeatable Hero Sword. His mother reacts with mild hesitation, but still acknowledges the name positively. Filled with excitement, Iberia raises the sword and imagines himself as an awakened fighter preparing to face disaster beasts. With enthusiasm, he heads outside, eager to show the sword to others. His mother reminds him to be careful before he leaves. Inside the house, his father appears near his mother and asks whether Iberia has friends. Outside, several children gather around Iberia, staring at the sword with visible interest and excitement. One of the boys expresses jealousy and asks to see the sword for a moment. Iberia tightens his grip on the sword, feeling nervous under their attention. The boys remind him that his father is a famous crafter who can easily create more items like it, assuring him that they will return it soon. Internally, Iberia struggles with hesitation. He recognizes that the sword is his and wants to refuse, but he finds it difficult to say no clearly. When one of the boys presses him again, asking if he refuses to lend it, Iberia hesitates briefly before forcing a smile. Despite his reluctance, he hands over the sword. After receiving it, one of the boys runs off while pretending to be an awakened fighter, imitating heroic actions with the sword. The group of children follows, running away together. Iberia remains standing in place, frozen, watching as they carry his sword away. Biting his lips, Iberia quietly asks for the sword to be returned, but his voice lacks strength and does not stop the others. After some time passes, he returns home without the sword. When he enters, his mother welcomes him warmly and asks if he had fun. Iberia responds with a forced smile, pretending that everything went well. His mother soon notices that he returned empty-handed and asks about the wooden sword. His father immediately realizes what happened and concludes that the same group of children took it again. Hearing this, his mother prepares to go retrieve it, but his father stops her, explaining that even if she recovers it now, the same situation will repeat in the future. His father then turns his frustration toward Iberia, scolding him for being unable to protect something precious and for lacking the courage to ask for help. Afterward, Iberia withdraws into a dark room and sits alone on the floor. Tears continue falling as he cries silently, questioning the reason he admires Itsuki and why he wants to become someone like him. The scene shifts forward a few months. Inside a hospital, Iberia's father grabs a doctor by the collar in anger after hearing that there are no remaining treatment options. The doctor apologizes and explains that they did everything possible, but Iberia's mother had always been physically weak. Iberia's father reacts with frustration, questioning whether they are now expected to wait helplessly for her death. The doctor urges him to remain by her side, explaining that her remaining time is limited. Inside the hospital room, Iberia's mother calls out to him. Iberia approaches and holds her hand while crying. Despite her condition, she remains calm and smiles gently. She reassures him, explaining that although his father calls him spineless, she understands that his kindness is genuine. However, she warns that kindness without strength can become harmful, as it prevents someone from protecting loved ones and leads to personal suffering. She asks him to promise that he will become strong and use that strength bravely, expressing her belief that he will one day grow into a kind, courageous, and strong awakened. Afterward, she gently places her hand on his head and asks him to take care of his father. Moments later, her strength fades and her hand falls away as she passes. Iberia cries intensely, making a vow to become the strongest, bravest, and kindest awakened. The memory fades, and he returns to his later thoughts from the past. He continues questioning the reason behind his desire to become like Itsuki. He recalls that when they first met, fear was his only reaction to Itsuki's strength. At first, he believed their alliance would be temporary. However, over time, his perspective changed as he observed Itsuki's actions. He realized that Itsuki's strength was matched by unwavering courage. Regardless of whether he faced large groups of awakened or dangerous disaster beasts, he never hesitated. Beneath his serious demeanor, he also showed quiet kindness toward his companions. Coming out of his thoughts, Iberia finally reaches an answer to the question he had been considering. He explains that Itsuki represents the exact image of the awakened he always dreamed of becoming, someone strong, brave, and kind. Jusuk reacts to this realization with understanding, noting that hearing such words would deeply affect Itsuki. Iberia acknowledges his own limitations, believing that he may never become someone like Itsuki due to his fears and lack of talent. However, he accepts that standing beside him and fighting together would be enough. The scene then returns to the present inside the forest. Iberia's body has completely transformed into a monstrous form under the influence of the dragon gear. His original appearance is no longer visible, replaced by the overwhelming presence of the transformed creature. Itsuki arrives at the scene and calls out to him. The transformed Iberia slowly turns toward Itsuki and stares at him for a moment. Shortly afterward, the creature releases a powerful roar, directing its hostility toward him. The scene shifts to Prophecy Day 2. 3:31 a.m. Iberia continues roaring in front of Itsuki, showing clear signs of losing control. Itsuki calls out to him with confusion, questioning why he is wearing the dragon gear again, despite being forbidden from using it. As he observes more closely, he begins to notice unusual changes in Iberia's behavior and appearance. His reactions feel unnatural, and his physical form looks slightly different from before. Under the influence of the dragon gear, Iberia continues making strange sounds, attempting to form words, but failing to communicate clearly. Itsuki struggles to understand what he is trying to say and asks about Aiden's whereabouts. Instead of responding clearly, Iberia releases another heavy roar and unleashes a shockwave attack toward Itsuki. Itsuki avoids the attack by moving out of its path. Before he can respond, Iberia immediately launches another attack from behind, attempting to strike without warning. At the last moment, Itsuki intercepts the attack and grabs Iberia's arm to stop the strike. Frustrated by the situation, he demands that Iberia regain control of himself. Iberia quickly pulls away and lands at a distance. He continues roaring, producing distorted sounds that resemble laughter. His claws tighten as he prepares another attack. He activates a wind-based ability and releases a sharp wind blade toward Itsuki. Recognizing the incoming attack, Itsuki activates his detection ability to analyze it. He identifies the attack as a wind elementalist skill and reacts accordingly. At the final moment, he evades the attack by moving behind nearby trees. The wind blade slices through the trees in front of him, cutting them down with ease. Realizing that the situation cannot be resolved through hesitation, Itsuki begins gathering energy around himself. He considers the possible causes of Iberia's condition, including the side effects of the dragon gear or the possibility of external control. Deciding to act quickly, he activates his Thunderbird ability and advances toward Iberia with the intention of subduing him. As he closes the distance, he grabs Iberia again to prevent another strike. Iberia continues roaring in anger, resisting the restraint. While holding him, Itsuki senses that the magical energy coming from Iberia is unmistakably his own. Despite this, he struggles to understand why Iberia would attack him in this state. Frustration builds as the situation becomes clearer, and his anger begins to surface. At that moment, Iberia finally manages to force out clear words, revealing his desperate request and asking Itsuki to kill him. Hearing Iberia's voice clearly, Itsuki is briefly shocked. Taking advantage of that moment, Iberia releases another shockwave while still under the possession of the dragon gear. The impact pushes Itsuki slightly backward. Without wasting time, Iberia follows up with a powerful claw strike. Before the attack can land, Jusuk arrives between them and blocks the incoming strike with his sword. Itsuki warns him to be careful, but Jusuk immediately counters by delivering a powerful punch to Iberia's chest. The force of the blow sends Iberia flying into the air before crashing heavily onto the ground. Itsuki attempts to explain Iberia's condition, but Jusuk already understands the situation and recognizes that it has reached the worst possible outcome. Suddenly, Iberia rises again and begins moving at extreme speed, circling around them continuously. His movement becomes so fast that both of them struggle to follow his motion. Itsuki realizes that Iberia has entered a completely berserk state, while Jusuk confirms that the dragon gear has fully swallowed him. Understanding that this is the side effect of the dragon gear, Itsuki realizes that the only solution is to remove it as quickly as possible. However, Jusuk explains that removing it is no longer possible because the gear has already fused with Iberia's body. He recalls witnessing another awakened who was once taken over in the same way, explaining that dragon gear does not separate from its wearer unless the wearer dies. This realization shocks Itsuki, but Jusuk firmly states that killing Iberia may be the only remaining option. Jusuk raises his sword, preparing to take responsibility himself, and suggests that Itsuki leave if he cannot endure the situation. However, instead of stepping away, Itsuki moves forward and declares that he will handle it. Jusuk reacts with surprise and refuses at first, unwilling to let him carry such a burden. Itsuki then reminds him that Aiden has been taken by the ice-controlling disaster beast and suggests using the wolf to track their location so that Jusuk can rescue him. Although hesitant, Jusuk begins to understand the reasoning. Itsuki stops him from arguing further and explains that there are still things he wants to say to Iberia. He raises his hand and summons the wolf. After a moment of hesitation, Jusuk agrees and entrusts the situation to Itsuki. He warns that if Iberia escapes, his strength and feral instincts will only grow worse, making it essential to end the confrontation there. At that moment, Iberia leaps onto a tree branch and immediately launches another attack from above. Itsuki responds by creating a barrier of black ice to block the incoming strike. As the clash continues, Jusuk begins running toward Aiden's location, calling for the wolf to follow him. Unable to break through the barrier, Iberia withdraws and continues roaring in frustration. He activates his wind blade ability and releases repeated strikes toward Itsuki. Itsuki remains standing calmly in place while observing the attacks. Despite the continuous assault, his defensive ability does not activate automatically, indicating that the attacks lack lethal intent. One of the strikes grazes his cheek, leaving a shallow cut. From this, Itsuki realizes that Iberia is not attacking with full intent to kill. Iberia becomes increasingly agitated and releases another series of roars. His anger intensifies as he activates the Thousand Wind Blades ability, releasing numerous attacks simultaneously. This time, instead of evading, Itsuki continues walking forward toward him. The attacks strike his body from multiple directions, leaving small cuts across his skin. Despite the repeated hits, he does not retreat and continues advancing steadily. Iberia grows more irritated as his attacks fail to stop Itsuki's advance. His roars become louder, and signs of emotional instability begin to appear as he continues attacking while breaking down internally. The scene shifts to the monster realm. Enrollment stands before his lord and bows while reporting the outcome of their mission. He confirms that Aiden has been successfully captured, but also reports that the Red Flame Demon King and the White Oni were killed by humans. Linga listens calmly and states that there are many fighters capable of defeating enemies at that level, and that capturing Aiden alone makes the mission successful. Enrollment continues his report, mentioning that Tsurushikoma appears to be struggling in his battle. Linga responds that the situation is acceptable because Tsurushikoma was never expected to eliminate Izumi Menduo. His assigned role was only to hold back most of the special class saviors. Enrollment then adds that Tsurushikoma is currently fighting only one special class opponent. Hearing this, Linga shows interest and notes that aside from Taiwajin, there appears to be another human capable of holding Tsurushikoma alone. He asks for the identity of that fighter. Enrollment reports that, according to their insider, the fighter is known for possessing the strongest body among humans, and his name is Hiten Akira. The scene shifts to the area near Izumi Menduo's residence. Hiten continues his intense battle against the Yeti-type disaster beast, Tsurushikoma. Their attacks collide repeatedly, producing strong shockwaves that spread dust and debris throughout the surrounding area. The intensity of the battle shocks those watching from nearby. Kirishima observes the ongoing fight with surprise, realizing that the battle which began the previous afternoon has continued without interruption. Even after enough time for his own wounds to nearly heal, the clash between the two fighters remains unresolved. Witnessing a battle of such scale from close range leaves him deeply astonished. During the exchange, the disaster beast roars and delivers another powerful punch to Hiten. The force behind the attack is strong enough to shake the ground, causing concern among the observers. Choha becomes alarmed after seeing the impact of the blows. Recognizing the destructive power of the attacks, she fears that if Hiten were to fall, no one else would be capable of stopping the disaster beast. Driven by that concern, she begins moving toward the battlefield. Before she can reach them, Izumi Menduo stops her by placing a hand on her shoulder. He reassures her that Hiten is not weak enough to fall from attacks of that level. As the monster continues striking Hiten, The repeated impacts create deep cracks across the ground. Rikuru observes the destruction and becomes shocked at the scale of the damage. Izumi Minduo explains that all special class fighters stand at the very peak of human strength and should never be underestimated. Amid the destruction, Hiten begins rising from the ground while resisting the beast's attack. He pushes against the giant fist with overwhelming force, preventing it from crushing him further. Unable to overpower him, the giant beast shows signs of agitation. Hiten fully stands, gripping the monster's punch with only one hand, demonstrating complete control over the clash. Witnessing this, Izumi Minduo remarks that it has been a long time since he last saw Hiten's second form. Choha reacts with surprise after hearing about this second form. While still holding the beast's fist with one hand, Hiten begins releasing intense red energy from his body. His eyes glow with the same color, and his presence changes noticeably. From a distance, Choha observes that his presence feels entirely different from before, as if he is transformed into another person. Izumi Minduo explains that entering this state causes all of Hiten's abilities to increase dramatically. However, the transformation also causes his temperament to become extremely aggressive and ruthless. As the energy continues to surge, Hiten releases a powerful roar and forcefully pushes away the giant beast's hand, fully asserting dominance over the clash. Izumi Minduo then prepares to reveal the title associated with this transformed state, introducing the nickname given to Hiten while in this form. Hiten, overwhelmed with anger, launches himself into the air while releasing immense energy from his body. Moving at extreme speed, he advances toward the giant beast and pierces directly through its chest. The force of the attack creates a massive hole as he passes through the monster's body. After exiting from the other side, he lands on the ground behind the beast. The monster remains standing momentarily before losing stability. Hiten rises slowly and begins walking away calmly in another direction. From a distance, Choha watches him move away and becomes confused about where he is heading. Izumi Minduo explains that he is likely moving toward the stone pillar responsible for maintaining the barrier. Choha observes his controlled movements and reflects on how he maintains awareness even in that heightened state. Izumi Minduo explains that if Hiten lost control and attacked without distinguishing between allies and enemies, his increased power would only cause destruction, preventing him from becoming a true special class protector. Hiten eventually reaches the stone pillar and begins striking it repeatedly. With continuous and forceful blows, he shatters the structure. As the pillar collapses, the glow in his eyes fades and his condition stabilizes. His aggressive state disappears, and he regains calmness. While clenching his fist, he reflects inwardly, questioning why he is there and whether the enemies have already been handled. He recognizes the return of the presence that surfaces during his transformation and sits down on the ground, acknowledging its troublesome nature. As the pillar is destroyed, the red barrier surrounding the area begins to fade. Choha watches the barrier disappear and wonders if the situation has finally been resolved. Izumi Minduo shifts the focus toward her earlier actions, pointing out that she attempted to heal Hiten despite the risk to her own life. He notes that such behavior differs from her usual cautious nature, where retreat would normally be suggested over risking everything for a slim chance of victory. He remarks that she has begun resembling Itsuki in her decision-making. She quietly denies the comparison, but then shifts her thoughts toward Itsuki, wondering about his condition in the forest. Although powerful allies, such as Jusuk, are present there, uncertainty remains about the outcome. The scene shifts back to the forest. Iberia, still under the possession of the dragon gear, continues attacking while crying internally. He struggles to understand why Itsuki is not avoiding the incoming attacks. Itsuki continues walking forward without attempting to evade. He intentionally allows the attacks to strike him, understanding that physical pain can suppress hesitation and keep his mind focused. Multiple wind blade attacks continue striking his body, leaving cuts across his skin. Blood flows from the injuries, but he is not slowed down. Despite the repeated impacts, he continues advancing until he reaches Iberia. Once close enough, Itsuki grabs Iberia by the neck, stopping his movement. He raises his hand and prepares to release a piercing orb attack. Before releasing it, he declares that this will bring the conflict to an end. Iberia releases one final shockwave through a roar. Despite visible hesitation, Itsuki releases the orb. The attack pierces through Iberia's chest. The impact causes Iberia's body to collapse, and Itsuki immediately catches him before he falls completely. As Iberia's consciousness begins fading, the dragon gear starts disappearing from his body. His appearance returns to its original form. Still held by Itsuki, he begins apologizing, expressing regret for losing control and fear of becoming a burden. Itsuki reassures him that he was never considered a burden. Iberia questions this with uncertainty, and Itsuki confirms that each of them simply excels in different ways. With weakening strength, Iberia holds onto Itsuki's arm and shares the information he faintly heard earlier, that the disaster beast intends not to kill his father, but to control him. He expresses trust that Itsuki will be able to save his father. Itsuki accepts this responsibility and declares his determination to defeat the disaster beast responsible for the tragedy. Iberia, enduring increasing pain, forces a final smile. With relief, he expresses gratitude for being able to speak one last time and entrusts the future to Itsuki. The scene shifts to Prophecy Day 2, 3:33 a.m., marking the moment of Iberia's death. The perspective then moves to the demon realm. Demon god Linga acknowledges the outcome, recognizing that events have advanced further than expected. However, he states that this is only the beginning of a larger plan. With a distorted sense of satisfaction, he expresses his intention to destroy the things precious to Itsuki one by one, promising further suffering in the future. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a forest near the residence of Izumi Menduo, where he moves through the forest together with Choha and Kairazima. While walking, Kairazima reflects inwardly, thinking that he originally believed everything would be resolved after defeating the disaster beast. However, he did not expect to escort Izumi so deep into the mountains. This responsibility was originally assigned to Hiten, but after the battle, Hiten is unable to even stand. At that moment, Choha's magical butterfly detector senses an unusual emotional disturbance. Recognizing the signal, she identifies that Gyukuchu has detected a strange emotional wave. After locating the direction, she points ahead and confirms that the source of the wave is just beyond their current position. Kairazima immediately reacts with caution. Looking toward the direction indicated, he prepares for possible danger and draws his sword defensively. As he observes the distant figure, he initially suspects the presence of a humanoid disaster beast. As they move closer, both Choha and Kairazima notice the figure more clearly and become shocked. Choha recognizes the silhouette from behind and realizes that it belongs to Tenma. They soon discover Tenma sitting in the forest, severely injured, with blood flowing from his wounds. In his arms, he holds the lifeless body of Iberia. As they approach, Tenma slowly turns toward them, revealing the full extent of his condition. Choha becomes deeply alarmed upon seeing his injuries and struggles to understand what happened during the battle that led to such a state. At that moment, Jusuk emerges from the darkness along with the giant hound. He steps forward and takes responsibility for explaining the situation. Kairazima reacts with confusion at the sudden appearance of another individual. Izumi Menduo quickly recognizes Jusuk as a first-class savior assigned to guard Aiden and questions his presence in the area. Jusuk's expression becomes heavy as he delivers the report. He explains that the battle has ended in failure. The aftermath of the foretold battle becomes clear. Half of the North Continent's District 7 has been destroyed, the legendary crafter Aiden Hiss has been kidnapped, and his son Iberia Biss has lost his life. The scale of the disaster marks the outcome as the worst possible result. The scene then shifts inside Izumi Menduo's residence. Inside the house, Jusuk continues his explanation with a tense expression. He reports that the hound was used to track the magical traces left behind by the disaster beast. However, despite the effort, only clones were discovered instead of the original target. He explains that the disaster beast acted with extreme caution and intelligence, anticipating pursuit and deliberately leaving multiple clones to prevent anyone from locating its true position. Izumi Menduo then asks about Tenma's condition. Choha reports that most of Tenma's injuries are superficial and the bleeding has already been controlled. However, she expresses concern about his refusal to accept treatment. She also senses that the anger burning inside him has grown stronger than before, and warns that if this continues, his heart may eventually be consumed by hatred. Meanwhile, the scene shifts inside the room of the protagonist. He sits quietly on his bed with a heavy and sorrowful expression, staring at a photograph of Iberia together with his parents. His hound rests beside the bed, remaining close to him. As he continues looking at the picture, memories of his time with Iberia begin resurfacing in his mind. He recalls their first meeting when Iberia introduced himself and asked for his name. Another memory follows, where he once carried an injured Iberia on his back after a battle. He then remembers a moment when Iberia held onto him tightly, refusing to leave his side. Another memory appears, where Iberia spoke cheerfully about naming Shikigami and confidently offered to name one himself. After reliving these memories, the present moment returns. The protagonist slowly stands up from the bed and turns away from the photograph. He looks toward his hound and gives a clear command. In response, the hound rises and lets out a loud howl. With a determined and dark resolve forming within him, he prepares to leave the room, moving toward the exit with the intention of pursuing the disaster beast responsible for the tragedy. At that moment, Izumi Menduo enters the room along with Choha, Kairazima, and Jusuke. Their sudden appearance causes the protagonist to pause in confusion. While observing him, Kairazima internally forms an impression of the protagonist. He recalls hearing about the boy's achievements, including creating a powerful barrier and defeating a high-level disaster beast alone. However, he also remembers hearing that the boy killed his own friend, leading him to view the protagonist as strong but emotionally distant. Izumi Menduo steps forward and questions the protagonist's intention to leave. The protagonist explains that he plans to locate the Ice Attribute Disaster Beast and rescue Aiden. Izumi immediately refuses the request. The refusal causes the protagonist's anger to rise, and he demands an explanation. Izumi calmly explains that the protagonist has not yet earned the rank of Savior, and the Savior Alliance has already classified the incident as a special class danger. He clarifies that participation in the rescue requires at least second-class Savior status, a qualification the protagonist does not yet possess. Hearing this, the protagonist's anger intensifies. He insists that he has a responsibility to act, especially after making a promise to save Aiden. Despite opposition, he expresses his determination to proceed. Kairazima becomes shocked by the boldness of the response, while Choha internally worries that Izumi's blunt words may be too harsh given the protagonist's fragile emotional state. Jusuke also reacts with visible surprise at the rising tension. Izumi then challenges the protagonist with a serious question, asking whether he would be able to accept responsibility if someone else died because of his actions. This question causes the protagonist to fall silent in shock. Izumi continues, acknowledging the protagonist's feelings and admitting that the situation partly resulted from his own misjudgment. He explains that he initially believed the disaster beast targeted only him, which caused him to neglect Aiden's protection. However, he reasons that since Aiden was captured after significant effort, the enemy is unlikely to kill him immediately. He further explains that with the protagonist's current strength, confronting the disaster beast would only result in a meaningless death. Despite this, he emphasizes that the protagonist possesses enormous potential, and surpassing special class fighters is not impossible. He promises that if the protagonist reaches that level, he will personally request the Alliance to allow him to lead Aiden's rescue. Hearing this, the protagonist regains focus and asks what he must do to reach that level. Izumi provides a direct answer by introducing the concept of Apex Camp. When the protagonist shows confusion, Izumi explains that awakened fighters who rank within the top 10 of the Savior Alliance national tournament preliminaries are invited to attend the Apex Camp held in Nakasu. He explains that many powerful figures, including renowned fighters such as Taiwajin and He Tenakira, completed this intense training in the past. Those who endure the harsh training become key defenders of humanity. He concludes by revealing that this year's Apex Camp is scheduled to begin in 3 days, presenting the protagonist with a clear path toward gaining the strength needed for the future. Izumi Menduo continues explaining that successfully overcoming the trials of Apex Camp would not only secure a high rank in the main tournament, but also serve as a direct path toward becoming a special class savior. Hearing this, the protagonist accepts the decision with strong determination and confirms his intention to join Apex Camp. Before leaving the room, Izumi Menduo points out that the protagonist's injured condition must be addressed first. After that, Choha begins healing the protagonist using her magic. While the healing continues, the protagonist asks Choha about Apex Camp, wanting to know more about it. Choha reacts with surprise at the sudden question and realizes that he is seriously considering joining. The protagonist shows no hesitation and refers to Izumi's statement that Apex Camp is the ideal place to grow stronger. In response, Choha explains the harsh reality of the camp. She describes it as a place meant only for exceptional talents, where even individuals praised as geniuses throughout their lives often lose confidence after joining. Many realize their limitations under the overwhelming pressure, and some fail mentally. She further explains that the training environment is extremely dangerous, with brutal trials and high-level challenges that lead to fatal accidents every year. Instead of being discouraged, the protagonist accepts this information calmly and views it as an ideal opportunity. After the healing process ends, he reflects inwardly on his own abilities. He recognizes that against weaker opponents, his special abilities do not activate fully, and that true growth requires facing powerful enemies in life-threatening situations. This realization strengthens his belief that only battles against strong disaster beasts will allow him to improve. He expresses that confronting powerful disaster beasts is the responsibility of awakened fighters. Hearing this, Choha becomes visibly surprised, and her expression changes as she reacts to his resolve. The protagonist notices the change in her expression and wonders whether the prolonged healing exhausted her. She quickly denies this, explaining that extended use of skills naturally raises body temperature. Internally, however, she becomes aware of her own unusual reaction and questions her thoughts before shaking them off. After putting on his coat, the protagonist thanks Choha for treating his wounds and prepares to leave. Choha becomes confused by his sudden movement and asks where he is heading. In response, he calmly reveals that he is going to say goodbye. The scene then shifts to the forest. There, the protagonist stands in front of Iberia's grave alongside Jusuk. Both remain silent, looking at the grave with deep sadness. Jusuk expresses regret for forcing the protagonist into such a painful decision. The protagonist accepts the responsibility, acknowledging that the choice was his own. After a moment, Jusuk realizes that the protagonist is preparing to depart soon. The protagonist confirms that he will be leaving to join Apex Camp, intending to strengthen himself. His goal is to gain enough power so that, one day, he can personally defeat the disaster beast responsible for everything that happened. The protagonist turns toward Jusuk and asks about his own plans. Jusuk reflects on his past and explains that without his master, he would have died long ago at the hands of a disaster beast and never become an awakened. Everything he possesses now, including his armor, weapons, and even his life, was given to him by his master. Because of that, he is determined to find him no matter what. In response, the protagonist extends his fist toward Jusuk. Jusuk is momentarily surprised, but the protagonist maintains the gesture as a sign of resolve. He declares his intention to become a savior and join Jusuk in rescuing Aiden, asking him to stay alive until that moment. Jusuk, realizing the strength of the protagonist's determination, accepts it. The two of them acknowledge each other's resolve and complete the gesture by bumping their fists together. From a distance, Izumi Menduo and Choha observe the scene. Choha reflects on how quickly the protagonist has recovered, despite being completely broken both physically and mentally just a few hours earlier. Izumi Menduo explains that the protagonist has not truly overcome those emotions, but has instead pushed them deep inside, where they may resurface in the future. Afterward, Izumi Menduo decides to move on from the location. He mentions that there are multiple suspicious aspects surrounding the recent attack and plans to gather commanders from each continent for a meeting. Before leaving, he entrusts Choha with the responsibility of looking after the protagonist. Choha accepts this responsibility confidently. Shortly after, the protagonist appears behind her and notices her unusually cheerful expression. He then asks about their next destination. Choha regains her composure and avoids revealing details, stating that the information is classified. She then informs him that she has been assigned to take care of him and will act as his guardian from now on. The protagonist accepts this outwardly, though internally he questions the idea of being treated like a child. When he asks what they will be doing next, Choha points ahead and states that they will immediately head to Nakasu to join Apex Camp. The protagonist agrees without hesitation, showing firm determination. The scene then shifts to a hospital room. Reiji lies on a bed, heavily injured, as he recalls the moment he was defeated. The memory triggers a sudden reaction, and he regains consciousness in a state of fear and agitation. His mother rushes in to comfort him, recognizing that he is once again reliving the trauma. However, his fear quickly turns into anger as he expresses his desire for revenge, wanting to inflict far greater pain in return. His mother reassures him that his older brother has returned and will take revenge on his behalf. He looks toward the entrance as his brother arrives. The brother acknowledges his condition calmly, while Reiji, overwhelmed with emotion, demands that the one responsible be punished. The brother asks for confirmation of the name, identifying the person as Itsuki Tenma. Reiji confirms and describes him as someone insignificant despite achieving first place in the preliminaries, emphasizing that his level is far below his brother's. Hearing this, the brother becomes interested. Realizing that the protagonist will participate in Apex Camp, he decides that this will be the place where he will confront him and settle the matter personally. After reaching near the camp, Choha informed him that they had arrived. Seeing the massive and astonishing structure of the camp, the protagonist became surprised, realizing that the place looked completely different from what he had imagined. As he observed the other participants around him, he noticed that everyone carried themselves with strong confidence, just as Choha had mentioned earlier. Choha then informed him that she could not go inside with him, and that he would have to continue on his own from that point. Before leaving, she handed him his record bracelet, explaining that it was necessary for participating in the camp. She also advised him to avoid doing anything that would draw too much attention, warning him not to get noticed unnecessarily. The protagonist acknowledged her advice and rushed toward the entrance, while Choha watched him from behind with concern, feeling worried because of his personality. After reaching the reception desk, the protagonist requested to register as a participant. The receptionist, without paying much attention, extended his hand and asked for the bracelet. After receiving it, the receptionist went into another room to check the bracelet using a device. During this time, the protagonist sensed a dense aura coming from the receptionist and realized that even the reception staff possessed strength at level 40 or higher, making him understand that the Apex Camp was on a completely different level. Soon, the protagonist's details appeared on the receptionist screen, revealing his name, level, job, and special gift classification. Upon seeing that the protagonist had a level of 0, the receptionist became surprised and assumed that he must have used connections to pass the preliminaries. However, he also believed that connections alone would not be enough to survive in such a place without genuine ability. The receptionist then instructed the protagonist to select a room and settle the accommodation fee afterward. This surprised the protagonist, as he had not expected that staying there would require payment. The receptionist clarified that the camp was not a charity and explained that participants were expected to pay using points. Hearing this, the protagonist became confused because he had not been told about this earlier and believed he had no money. The receptionist then explained that participants' assets within the camp were determined by the points they earned during the preliminaries. Those points were automatically transferred upon entry and could be used as currency to buy food, daily necessities, and accommodation. He also mentioned that more points could be earned by completing missions inside the camp. After understanding this system, the protagonist realized how important points were in this environment. Remembering that he had earned a significant number of points during the preliminaries, he felt that it should be enough to manage his stay. The receptionist then urged him to hurry and select a room because others were waiting, prompting the protagonist to begin considering the cost of the most luxurious room. After hearing the room pricing, the receptionist listed the options, explaining the size and monthly point cost for a normal room, a luxury room, and a villa. After listening to the details, the protagonist considered the normal room would be sufficient for himself alone, but since death was also with him, a cramped space would not be suitable. With that in mind, he decided to select the villa. The receptionist was extremely shocked by this choice and reacted with disbelief, warning him that even if he currently had many points, wasting them carelessly would cause problems later since points were constantly consumed in daily life at the camp. Despite the warning, the protagonist remained firm in his decision and asked the receptionist to proceed with the booking quickly. The receptionist began processing the request on his computer while inwardly thinking that the protagonist was being careless and inexperienced. After completing the booking, he returned the bracelet and explained that once inside the camp, everyone's stats would become hidden, preventing participants from checking others' names, gifts, or levels. The protagonist acknowledged the information and walked away. As the protagonist left, the receptionist remained curious about how many points he must have earned to confidently choose a villa. He then checked the protagonist's point balance on his device. Upon seeing the number displayed, he became extremely shocked after discovering that the protagonist possessed over 100,000 points. Comparing this with his own much smaller amount from the past, he felt overwhelmed and realized how formidable the newer generation had become. Meanwhile, the protagonist entered the main residential area and continued walking forward. While moving ahead, he suddenly realized with irritation that he had forgotten to ask for the exact location of the villa. With no other option, he decided to return to the reception desk to ask for directions. However, before he could go back, two boys blocked his path. One of them, a large and bulky boy, approached and introduced that they had arrived from the South Continent the previous day. They noticed that the protagonist seemed lost and offered to guide him. The protagonist explained that he was trying to reach the villa and asked if they knew the way. Upon hearing this, the bulky boy reacted with surprise and attempted to recall the location, while the other boy began to respond, but suddenly stopped as both of them realized what had just been mentioned. They became visibly shocked and confused by the mention of the villa. Trying to cover up their reaction, one of them quickly pulled the other aside, and the two began discussing quietly while pretending to remember the correct direction. Watching their suspicious behavior, the protagonist began to feel doubtful about their intentions, questioning why they were acting so secretively over something as simple as directions. At that moment, a girl known as Akagami Cheyenne, who had placed 5th in the North Continent preliminaries, appeared nearby along with her cat. Observing the two boys, she recognized that they were attempting to scam points from newcomers by pretending to offer directions. She then wondered who their next victim would be. When she looked more closely at the protagonist, she became shocked after recognizing him as the individual who had earned over 100,000 points during the preliminaries. Realizing who he was, she felt intrigued and found the situation becoming increasingly interesting. Meanwhile, the bulky boy spoke quietly with his companion, noting that the protagonist was staying in a villa and wondering if he might be a first-place winner from one of the continents. However, they reasoned that even someone who placed first would not normally spend such a large amount of points on lodging. His companion assumed that the protagonist was likely a rich and spoiled newcomer who did not understand how valuable points were, and concluded that such individuals were usually weak and easy targets. With this assumption, they decided to take advantage of him and attempt to seize his points. While they were still discussing, the protagonist stated that if they could not remember the way, he would find the location himself. At that moment, both boys approached him again with greedy expressions and claimed that they had remembered the route. They then began guiding him toward the villa area. As they walked, nearby participants recognized the two boys as Fumiya Fataki and Ikitora Sano, individuals known as outcasts from the South Continent. Observing the situation, other participants assumed that the protagonist had fallen into their trap and believed that, due to his seemingly weak appearance, he would soon lose all his points. While moving further ahead, the protagonist passed by Gaku Oi, who had placed 3rd in the North Continent preliminaries. Gaku recognized the protagonist as the boy who had asked unusual questions before the preliminaries. However, after seeing that he had been caught up with the two outcasts, Gaku decided not to interfere, choosing instead to remain focused on his own objective of surpassing Itsuki Tenma, the first-place winner of the North Continent preliminaries. Eventually, they reached the villa area, where the bulky boy pointed out that they had arrived at the correct location. As they looked at the large villa structures, both boys exchanged greedy glances, satisfied with the opportunity in front of them. Soon after, they demanded payment from the protagonist for guiding him. The protagonist acknowledged that since they had guided him to the location, it was reasonable to offer them a tip. His willingness to pay so easily surprised both boys, making them realize that he might be even easier to exploit than they had initially thought. When asked how much payment they wanted, the bulky boy initially suggested a smaller amount, but his companion quickly intervened and demanded a higher sum of 1,000 points. Although the protagonist felt that the requested amount was somewhat excessive, he still agreed to pay and asked how to transfer points to another person. Observing this reaction, the companion leaned toward the bulky boy and privately remarked that the protagonist appeared both weak and naive for agreeing to such a high payment for simple directions. Encouraged by this belief, they decided to push their advantage even further. With that intention, the companion then informed the protagonist that since the guidance had taken longer than expected, he would have to pay an additional amount beyond the originally requested fee. The bulky boy then loudly increased the demand, raising the total payment to 5,000 points. His companion supported this demand and threatened that if the amount was not enough, the protagonist would have to hand over everything he possessed. Hearing this, the protagonist showed clear disgust and realized that the situation had turned into outright extortion. At that moment, his anger rose sharply, and his attitude changed completely. The sudden shift in his demeanor caused both boys to feel uneasy, as they sensed that his presence had become far more intimidating than before. Despite their unease, the companion continued to act aggressively and threatened him again, insisting that he hand over the points or face consequences. The bulky boy reinforced the threat, warning that he would regret refusing. In response, the protagonist released a powerful surge of red energy and began walking toward them with clear hostility. His anger was evident as he prepared to confront them directly. The companion quickly activated his own power, declaring his ranking from the South Continent preliminaries and confidently attacking with a lightning-based strike. Moving at high speed, he launched a powerful lightning punch directly at the protagonist. The protagonist remained completely still as the attack connected. Immediately afterward, his ability activated and absorbed the lightning-based skill, increasing his agility. Despite the force of the attack, he remained unharmed, leaving the attacker shocked that his strike had produced no visible effect. Before the companion could react further, the protagonist countered with overwhelming speed, striking him and sending him flying through the air. The companion hit the ground violently, bouncing and rolling across the surface. Watching this, the bulky boy struggled to keep track of the protagonist's movements, realizing that his speed far exceeded what he could follow with his eyes. Determined to retaliate, the bulky boy activated his body enhancement skill, enlarging one of his hands to an enormous size in an attempt to finish the fight with a single decisive blow. He launched a powerful punch toward the protagonist, but the attack was stopped effortlessly by a counterstrike. This moment caused the bulky boy to realize that the protagonist possessed a similar body-altering ability, identifying him as an order breaker like himself. Refusing to back down, he enhanced both arms and began launching a rapid series of punches. However, the protagonist calmly blocked each strike with precise counters, showing no difficulty in defending against the barrage. As the bulky boy increased the speed and force of his attacks, he was gradually forced backward. Eventually, he stopped abruptly due to intense pain and looked down to discover that his fingers had been twisted from the repeated clashes. Overwhelmed by the pain and confusion, he realized that even with enhanced arms carrying significant attack and defense power, he was completely outmatched. The protagonist calmly explained that even after enhancement, the bulky boy's overall strength did not approach his own level. Terrified, the bulky boy began dragging himself backward across the ground, now fully panicked and questioning who the protagonist truly was. In response, the protagonist released a powerful violet energy and charged forward with a decisive strike, finally revealing his identity as Itsuki Tenma of the North Continent. As he moved to deliver the finishing blow, a system notice informed him that the next attack would become a guaranteed critical hit. Realizing the potential consequences, he stopped his strike at the final moment. The bulky boy, seeing the halted attack, felt an overwhelming sense of relief as fear took hold. The protagonist quickly understood that if the critical strike had landed directly, it would have caused irreversible damage. Maintaining a cold and controlled expression, he ordered both attackers to leave immediately. Terrified by his overwhelming strength, the two boys fled the area in panic, shouting in fear as they escaped. From a distance, Cheyenne observed the entire confrontation. She noted that the battle had ended in a one-sided victory, even though the two opponents had ranked highly in the South Continent preliminaries. This confirmed her impression that the protagonist possessed terrifying strength far beyond expectations. Soon after, an announcement echoed through the camp, instructing all participants to gather at the Apex Plaza immediately for the upcoming entrance test. Hearing the announcement, Cheyenne prepared herself to move toward the plaza along with her cat. At the same time, the protagonist also heard the announcement and focused on the upcoming challenge. Remembering earlier information that half of the participants would be eliminated during this stage, he began walking toward the Apex Plaza with firm determination, preparing himself to give his full effort in the entrance test.